Chapter 2219. Who should I vote for? 60,000 people in the audience fell into deep thought. Hiding in the corner, Jean Fei-hong was also looking forward to it. He still wanted to compete with Enlin. Although Enlin's performance was better than his, Enlin didn't have any fans before. He had the advantage of fans, so he should be able to surpass Enlin, right? If he could get more votes than Enlin tonight, he would be more confident when he returned to the training room. The voting began. Some super fans naturally voted for their own artists without hesitation. But how many of the 60,000 upper-class people were super fans of one artist? Most of them liked several top artists at the same time. After all, each top artist was so talented that they couldn't like one of them. The voting time was only 1 minute, so they couldn't discuss it. They could only think about it in their hearts and then make a decision. Obviously, the top artist of Red Ink Workshop was the most popular for votes. Goddess Gu Chio's new calligraphy is so beautiful and memorable. That's her. I love Golden Wheel Dance Empress Dance. I want to vote for Brother Dance Empress. Yunqian's singing is my favorite. Jean Ling, Er's 9-colored Phoenix Bell, is super nice. Ice Wolf's ice sculpture is art. In addition to talking about the top artists, everyone in the audience couldn't help but think of one person. Chicken, you're so fragrant. The top artists are good, but I can't forget that mouthful of chicken. The stir-fried dance satisfies both the visual and the taste. It's always a good feeling. Some of the fan groups had already begun to shout loudly for votes. Vote for Jean Ling. Vote for Jean Ling. Vote for Jean Ling. Vote for Goddess Gu Chio. Vote for Jean Fei-hong. A leader of Jean Fei-hong's fan group was also shouting. After shouting, he gave his vote to the man with the frying pan. Anyway, Jean Fei-hong had so many fans. His vote wouldn't be a problem, right? It wasn't easy for Liu Debao to start his career. What if Debao received too little money and lost his motivation to cook? What would happen if he stopped cooking? That would be a loss for the entire Red Ink Workshop and the holy land of Taichu. The leader of the fan group felt that he should secretly encourage the other party. He was still hoping to be able to eat Liu Debao's dishes the next time he watched the performance. The leader of the fan group didn't expect that there were actually quite a few fans who had similar thoughts as him. On the contrary, there were actually a lot of them, much more than he had imagined. Why? Because everyone thought that Liu Debao would get very few tickets. After all, he did not have a fan base. But Liu Debao's dance was too good, and the chicken was too fragrant. He should have fans. Before Liu Debao's fan club was established, they would temporarily be Liu Debao's fans. They would vote for Liu Debao's cooking and dance, and chicken you are so fragrant. One by one, the fans of the famous brands, even the fans of the top brands, began to secretly switch sides. They did not shout Liu Debao's name, but they had already voted for Liu Debao for the man of the match in their hearts. In the corner, Jean Fei-hong listened to his die-hard fans shouting his name, feeling extremely gratified and satisfied. His influence was not weak after all. Did you see that, Liu Debao? That was the difference between the two of them. I have a group of die-hard fans. Do you? Jean Fei-hong listened to the few audience members shouting for Liu Debao and smiled confidently, even though he didn't know what he was competing for. But he was happy. 1 minute passed quickly. Sister Hong and another MC both began to step onto the stage. At the same time, a huge holographic energy screen began to appear in the center of the stage, ready to display the voting results. The voting is over. Finally, it's time to announce the voting results. Who will be the Flower Master tonight? As usual, we will announce the votes of the top 10 artists. Let's see first, who is the artist with the 10th most votes? As soon as the voice fell, an old man of the stone tribe whose entire body was made of stone appeared on the screen with the number of votes, 1072. The 10th place is the painter Mao Busheng. He has received 1,072 votes. Congratulations. Sister Hua congratulated him with a smile, and the audience also applauded. A stone man walked onto the stage and bowed to the audience to express his gratitude. Immediately afterward, Hua Xiaomi, who was in 9th place, also happily walked onto the stage with 1,200 votes. The audience had all expected these artists to receive votes. Why isn't Lou DeBayo on the list yet? Could it be that Lou DeBayo isn't on the list? Some of the audience members began to feel dejected and regretful that they didn't shout Lou DeBayo's name during the voting process. He was clearly a very talented artist. Would Lou DeBayo be sad? Would he never cook again? The audience's hearts ached even more at this thought. Only Jean Fei-hong was extremely happy. Great! You can't even make it into the top 10? Let's see what you can do about it. Great! Immediately afterward, Jean Fei-hong's portrait appeared in 8th place. The 8th place is the martial artist Jean Fei-hong. He has received 1,282 votes. Congratulations. Jean Fei-hong's expression faltered. What? He was only in 8th place? One had to know that he was the strongest artist below the headliner. There were only 5 headliners present. So, shouldn't he be in 6th place? Why was he only in 8th place? Even though he was dumbfounded and shocked, Jean Fei-hong still forced a smile and pretended to be very happy and excited as he stood on the stage and bowed to the audience. At the same time, he began to feel puzzled. It seemed like he had more than 1,282 hardcore fans present. The 7th place is the famed Taoist He Xian. He has received 1,373 votes. Congratulations. Sister Hong continued to read out loud. Amidst the cheers of the audience, a large tortoise crawled onto the stage and happily nodded at the audience in response to their cheers and applause. Jean Fei-hong suddenly realized that He Xian's performance was indeed more stunning, so it was understandable that he had more votes than him. However, he was only in 7th place. How were the 5 famed people going to be divided into 6 positions? And there was even a famed person above He Xian. At this moment, a cute girl in yellow appeared on the big screen. Headliner, Jean Ling. Votes, 3698, ranked 6th. Silence. A deathly silence. Even Sister Hong was stunned for a long time before she started her live broadcast. What was going on? The 6th place wasn't a famed artist, but a headliner? Did this mean that a famed artist had more votes than the headliner? This was an earth-shattering event. However, there was no famed artist who could outperform the headliner. Wait a minute, there was someone who could do it. The audience suddenly came to a realization. There was a trainee who was neither a headliner nor a famed artist who could do it. Lou DeBayo. It was definitely Lou DeBayo. Backstage, Jean Ling-er's vision darkened when she saw this scene, and she almost fainted. Lou DeBayo, you ruined my youth. You ruined my career as a headliner. The girl's eyes were red. She felt that she was the first headliner to lose to a trainee in terms of votes. This was destined to be a stain on her life. Chapter 2220. In 6th place is the top musician, Jean Ling-er. She received 3,698 votes. Congratulations. Sister Hong announced the result. The word congratulations was as awkward as it could be. Jean Ling-er was still full of energy. She trotted onto the stage and expressed her gratitude to the audience in an innocent and cute manner. She swore that this was definitely the most intense performance she had ever given in her life. She wanted to cry, but she still had to smile. What should she do? The most shocked person was Jean Fei-hong. When Jean Fei-hong saw this scene, his previously comfortable heart was instantly pierced by a knife. How is this possible? Lou DeBayo spent more votes than the top performer? How is this possible? The audience was filled with emotion. Lou DeBayo's performance was indeed better than Jean Ling-er's, and he deserved to be in 5th place. The audience could accept this result. The vote they had secretly cast was not in vain. A trainee spent more votes than the top performer. They suddenly felt sorry for Jean Ling-er, who was still smiling on the stage. They didn't know what Jean Ling-er was thinking. Sister Hong's heart was filled with emotion. She didn't expect that the little brother with potential that she had found on the streets would shine so quickly. After tonight, Lou DeBayo's name would definitely resound in the 8th district. He did it. I didn't expect Brother DeBayo to really do it. Ing Bao's eyes lit up. She didn't expect the trainee she brought to visit the red ink workshop to be able to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat, of course. She still didn't believe that Lin could win the title of the top performer tonight. At this moment, the scene changed again. A snake man wearing golden armor appeared on the screen. The 60,000 spectators held their breaths once again. Top performer, Golden Wheel Dance Empress, spent 3,850 votes, ranked 5th. Ranked 5th? Wasn't Ludabeo? Golden Wheel Dance Empress was dumbfounded. I was actually defeated by Ludabeo? Ranked 5th is the top dancer, Golden Wheel Dance Empress, spent 3,850 votes. Congratulations! Sister Hong came back to her senses and congratulated her loudly. Golden Wheel Dance Empress swayed her snake tail and walked to the stage, sighing in her heart. Jean Ling Er didn't know why, but she didn't feel so bad anymore. Looking at Golden Wheel Dance Empress, she felt like they were in the same boat. She was not the only one who had lost to a trainee. This was very commendable. He gave a thumbs up to Liu Debao for his efforts. Sometimes, love and hate were separated by a thin line. The audience had yet to catch their breath. A frost wolf appeared on the screen. In 4th place is the ice sculptor, Ice Wolf, with 4,150 votes. Congratulations! Sister Hong was already numb as she loudly announced the results. If Liu Debao could win against Jean Ling Er and Golden Wheel Dance Empress, then it would be reasonable for him to win against Ice Wolf. A frost wolf gloomily walked towards the stage. Although Liu Debao's chicken was delicious, its ice sculpture was not bad either. Furthermore, it had a huge fan base. How could it lose? And Lin watched Ice Wolf ascend the stage with a faint smile on his face. How could he not know what the top girl was thinking? However, how could the headliners know how tempting it was for them to let the audience eat the most delicious chicken? Although the fans were good, a piece of chicken could betray the team. Backstage, the trainees and the top girls looked at the white shirt and felt that Liu Debao's figure was becoming taller and more imposing. Immediately after, a mermaid appeared on the screen. Top girl, songstress Yun Xian, for 1,560 votes, ranked 3rd. Instantly, the audience could not remain calm. Yun Xian was an outstanding existence, even among the top girls. Liu Debao actually defeated her. Sob, sob, sob. I shouldn't have voted for Debao. I should have voted for my Yun Xian, Yun Xian. A fan sorrowfully repented. Some of Yun Xian's fans glared at that fan, as if saying, "It's all your fault, you traitor. It's because of you that Yun Xian was defeated by Liu Debao." Of course, his repentance made many of the audience feel the same way. They did not dare to look at their idol directly, as they felt that they had let her down. Yun Xian ascended the stage. She did not have any negative emotions. Her beautiful eyes frequently glanced towards the back of the stage, as if waiting for Enlin to appear. The atmosphere in the venue became restless. As a trainee, Liu Debao actually obtained 2nd place. This was definitely the best in history. If not for Guccio suppression, Liu Debao would probably have ascended to the heavens. Just thinking about it was really scary. The 60,000 spectators became more and more shocked as they thought about it. Even the 3 district mayors, Ling Huang, Long Huang, and Red Huang, were on their guard. They wanted to see how many votes Liu Debao had obtained. At this moment, the screen finally showed the 2nd place. It was a beautiful and gentle woman, as if she had walked out of an ink painting. She used the starry sky as ink and heaven and earth as paper, writing a masterpiece of an era. Top girl, calligrapher Gu Qiu, 11,968 votes, ranked 2nd. This caused the audience to fall into silence. Top girl, Gu Qiu, who was firmly in the top 3 of Red Ink Workshop. In this Red Ink night, she was actually only ranked 2nd. The windows in the individual viewing rooms were opened. The top girls of Red Ink Workshop all looked at the results on the screen in astonishment. They were very surprised, really very surprised. As long as Gu Qiu did not meet the other 2 top artists, she had never lost in terms of votes. Even if the top girl fought against her on the same stage, the result would be a crushing defeat. But now, could it be that she was also going to lose to a trainee? The 60,000 spectators were dumbfounded. The artists were also dumbfounded. Even the district mayors, who were waiting to see how many votes Liu Debao had, were also dumbfounded. They all realized a very shocking reality. Trainee Liu Debao's votes had actually surpassed Gu Qiu's. Trainee Ludabeo was actually going to obtain the title of Red Ink Knight's Flower Queen. In second place is calligrapher Guccio, 11,968 votes. Congratulations. Sister Hong's voice was almost trembling as she announced this result. She had never thought, not even in her dreams, that there would be such a result. This had already exceeded the scope of her imagination. My goddess Guccio. No, impossible. How can my goddess Guccio lose to a trainee? There must be an error in the statistics. There must be an error in the statistics, right? Save it. This is the judgment of the Holy Walls branch system. Even if the world is destroyed, it can't be wrong. Sob, sob, sob. I should chop off my hand. Why did I vote for Ludabeo? Sob, sob, sob. Some of the spectators were shocked, while others were repenting. Did you guys notice that the top girl's votes are a little less? Yes, I also noticed this problem. Could it be some of the spectators thought of this possibility, and a chill rushed to the top of their heads? Although countless people did not dare to believe it, the image on the big screen changed. A man appeared on the screen, which was within their expectations, but still shocked them to the point that their scalps went numb. He was dressed in white, holding a pot in his left hand and a spatula in his right. His style was unique, and it contained an exceptional sense of beauty. Trainee Ludabeo, 26,720 votes, champion. The results were out. The audience was shocked. Chapter 22-21. Holy sh*t. The champion is really Ludabeo. He defeated 5 top artists in a row. Even Guccio was defeated by him. Is he a demon? Where did this monster come from? He's a trainee. Did you guys realize that his monthly votes, over 26,000? That's King Impossible, right? Does that mean that almost half of the audience voted for him? This can't be real, right? An audience member shouted angrily. However, the brothers beside him raised their hands one after another. I voted for him. I voted for him too. Sorry, the chicken smells too good. An audience member was full of guilt and said with tears streaming down his face. The audience member who shouted angrily was dumbfounded. They weren't the only ones who were dumbfounded. Countless famous brands and top celebrities were also dumbfounded. Even Guccio was moved. She stared blankly at the man on the screen, her cherry lips slightly open and her eyes unblinking. This was the most unstable emotional state she had ever been since she appeared on the stage. What kind of monster is this? Hong Huang slammed the table, her beautiful eyes looking at the man on the big screen in disbelief. She admitted that the cooking dance was a pioneer and that the chicken was very fragrant, but this number of votes was too exaggerated. This can't be real. This number of votes, how can this be possible? On the stage, Jin Feihong's eyes were bigger than Belle's as he stared at the man on the screen in shock. He only had a little more than 1,000 votes, but Ludabeo had more than 26,000 votes. This was more than 20 times his. What kind of concept was this? Not only did Ludabeo win the championship, but he won it with an absolute crushing of the votes. This miracle had never happened since Red Ink Workshop was founded on Red Ink Night. The champion is Red Ink Workshop's trainee Ludabeo. He won the championship with 26,720 votes. He won the title of Red Ink Knight's Flower Queen. Congratulations! Sister Hong was almost trembling as she shouted this name. She knew that this moment would definitely go down in history. This was an extremely shocking and grand moment. Under the watchful eyes of tens of thousands of people, Lin walked up to the stage and stood calmly in front of all the artists. Facing the tens of thousands of people in the audience, he bowed slightly. He had already expected it, so he wasn't particularly surprised. However, when the result really appeared, a huge stone in his heart was completely lifted, and he still felt relaxed. Ludabeo, congratulations. At this moment, a warm and gentle voice resounded in his ears. And Lin turned around and saw a white-clothed woman with a beautiful smile quietly looking at him. And Lin was a little surprised. Was this the first time Guccio was talking to someone else alone? Thank you, and Lin replied politely. Hey Xian, Ice Wolf, Yun Xian, and the other celebrities also congratulated Lin. Jean Ling Air put her hands on her hips and pouted. Humph, didn't you get so many votes by bribing the audience? And Lin was shocked. Someone had actually pointed out the true nature of the matter. He turned to look at Jean Ling Air. Jean Ling Air panicked a little under Lin's gaze, but she still stiffened her neck and said, "What's wrong? You don't accept it? Do you think I'm wrong? Is my chicken fragrant?" And Lin asked without answering her question. Jean Ling was caught off guard by this question. She couldn't go against her heart and could only say with difficulty, "Fragrant," and Lin chuckled. "That's part of my ability, understand?" Jean Ling Er's face became even redder. She pouted her lips and looked away. Although she wanted to deny it, she understood in her heart that Lin had indeed won the championship with his own ability. Without that ability, there was no way he could have won the championship. Next, let us invite our 8th District's District Chief, Hong Huang, to personally crown Liu Debao as the Flower Lord. Sister Hong's voice sounded again. Heavenly music sounded. Flower petals rained down from the sky. A peerlessly beautiful woman walked toward the stage with a flower wreath glowing with divine light in her hand. And Lin looked at the 8th District's ruler up close. At the same time, she was also the strongest existence in the 8th District. And Lin's strength was in the self-sealing stage, so he couldn't see how deep the other party's cultivation was. It could only be described as unfathomable. Congratulations, Liu Debao. You are tonight's Flower Lord, the most dazzling artiste of Red Ink Night. Hong Huang's beauty could be described as soul-stirring, especially when she smiled. She personally placed the flower wreath glowing with divine light on Lin's head. Instantly, countless fireworks bloomed around Red Ink Workshop. Clusters of fireworks bloomed in the night sky, illuminating this huge city. Congratulations to trainee Liu Debao for obtaining the highest number of votes and becoming the Flower Lord of Red Ink Night. Hong Huang's voice spread throughout the 8th District. Millions of people were stunned, as if they had heard wrongly. Trainee? Flower Lord? What was wrong with this world? Glory belonged to Liu Debao. From tonight onwards, Liu Debao's name would spread throughout the 8th District. At the scene of Red Ink Workshop's performance, dreamy flower petals swirled and fell. Everything was so romantic and beautiful. He felt a different energy fluctuation from the flower crown on Lin's head. That was the aura of the heavenly Tao. This discovery made him a little excited. The applause was thunderous. After Hong Huang put the flower crown on Lin, she didn't walk off the stage. She still stood on the stage and said to the audience, "There is one more very important thing. Our Red Ink Workshop has a very special rule. If an artiste can outspend all the other headliners in a performance with a headliner and get more than twice as many tickets as the headliner with the highest number of tickets on the spot, then that artiste can be directly promoted to the headliner of Red Ink Workshop." Now, Liu Debao's number of votes is 26,720, more than twice Guccio's 11968. So I hereby announce that trainee Liu Debao has officially become the headliner of Red Ink Workshop. Boom! This sentence was like a clap of thunder, waking up all the audience. Yes, because such a situation hadn't happened in a long time, they almost forgot there was such a rule. Now that they thought about it carefully, trainee Liu Debao was actually able to stand out in such a terrifying competition on the night of Red Ink and obtain more than twice the number of votes of Guccio. What level of difficulty was this challenge? And Liu Debao actually did it. Awesome, really too awesome. Liu Debao, Liu Debao, Liu Debao. One by one, the audience began to shout Liu Debao's name. At first, there were thousands of people, but in the end, tens of thousands of people shouted at the same time. They all loved and admired Lin's talent from the bottom of their hearts. The sound converged into a wave, breaking through Red Ink Workshop and reaching the sky. Lin stood in the center of the stage, listening to the deafening shouts and screams, and smiled happily. At this moment, he knew he had done it. He had successfully become the headliner of Red Ink Workshop. Chapter 2222. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your love for me. I will continue to work hard and contribute a better cooking dance for everyone. And Lin's speech ushered in another climax. Tonight was destined to be Lin's night. The audience's joy and cheers. The artists' envy and admiration. They were all making Lin even more dazzling and dazzling. The top mentors who had assessed him before were all in a trance at this moment. Lou DeBeo said he wanted to win the championship, and I refuted him. Now it seems that I was too naive, Daphne said with emotion. The old man next to her nodded. From the beginning, his goal was very clear, and he studied the hearts of people and the audience's preferences very deeply. He is definitely an extremely powerful artist. Ingbao did not think as much as the mentors. Her heart was beating wildly, and her breathing quickened. Countless thoughts were surging in her mind. Lou DeBeo did it? Lou DeBeo really did it? She thought it was a wishful thinking. Lou DeBeo actually made it happen? The scary thing was that Lou DeBeo had been aiming for this goal from the beginning. How deep was this man hiding? What kind of person was he? And that bet, what would Lou DeBeo ask her to do? Thinking of this, Ingbao's heart was beating wildly again. There was another person on the stage. That person's legs were already weak, and he wanted to hide in a crack in the ground. Jean Feihong did not expect that this trainee, who looked like a pushover, would become the star of Red Ink Workshop in just one day. The most important thing was that he had insulted Lou DeBeo in every possible way and wanted to kill him. Now, in the blink of an eye, others were going to look down on him. No wonder Lou DeBeo did not speak to him. He was not pretending, but he was really a funny clown, and Lin did not pay attention to Jean Feihong. Even though he had already gotten 10 points from being the best, he was too lazy to show off in front of Jean Feihong. After all, his goal was not there. When the Red Emperor saw that Lin was still calm despite the cheers of the crowd, he admired him even more. He said, Lou DeBeo, according to tradition, after you become the star, you have to perform another song for the audience. Is there such a custom? And Lin really didn't know. Ingbao didn't tell him, or maybe she was too lazy to tell him. After all, no one knew that Lou DeBeo could become the top girl in one night. You're not prepared? Impromptu performances are also allowed. When the Red Emperor saw Lin's expression, he did not feel unnatural at all. Instead, he smiled at Lin like a big sister next door, and his tone had the power to pacify people's hearts. When the audience heard that there was going to be a performance, they all got excited. Let's have another fried chicken. The Dragon Emperor's son shouted. The rest of the audience followed suit. Chicken, you smell so good. Chicken, you smell so good. Other dishes are fine too. Cow, you smell so good. I want pig, you smell so good. Fish, you smell so good. As the audience shouted, their stomachs started to get hungry. When Jean Ling'er saw this scene, she held her forehead and sighed. Despicable DeBeo, what have you done to our Red Ink Workshop? Red Ink Workshop was one of the last art palaces in this world, but now a large group of people were shouting the names of dishes. Those who didn't know would think that they were at market. And Lin smiled, but did not say anything. What was this style? At the start, he thought that the style of Red Ink Workshop was the style of Ihong Brothel. Sister Hong even said that the ladies inside were all artists. At that time, it was already polite of Lin not to laugh out loud. The 60,000 spectators were all very enthusiastic. They were looking forward to Lin's performance. However, Lin was quite distressed. He couldn't cook anymore. The frying pan could only be used once a day. If he used it again, it would not be as fragrant. Thus, he had to change his performance method. Then, what method should he change? Lin looked toward the venue. This place was extremely lively, and the cheers were like a tidal wave. All of the artists who had reached the pinnacle of their respective fields were looking at him with encouraging smiles on their faces, as if they were cheering him on. All of the spectators were extremely enthusiastic, as if everything was perfect. However, Lin knew that this was perhaps the last bit of beauty in the ancient Tai Chu realm. These people were clearly in a half-dead state, but they were still holding on to their civilization and believing in their time. Red Ink Workshop, Glazed Lantern, the starry sky of the Tai Chu ruins. Lin stood at the center of the stage in a white robe. He suddenly recalled a popular song from Earth. It was an old song from over 100 years ago. How many people still remembered this song? Just like the ancient Tai Chu realm, it was once the center of the universe. How many living beings still remembered it? The brightest star in the night sky. Can you hear me? Those who look up to me. The loneliness and sighs in the bottom of my heart. The song suddenly sounded, and the raucous venue and cheers abruptly disappeared. They were all qualified spectators, and they knew that Lin had already begun his performance, so they all remained silent. The Red Emperor was immediately dumbstruck. She felt like this song was very appropriate for their current situation. Wasn't the ancient Tai Chu realm once the brightest star in the night sky? But now they had become people they looked up to and reminisced about, the brightest star in the night sky. Can you remember the figure who once walked with me and disappeared in the wind and rain? An ethereal yet magnetic voice sounded. The spectators gradually began to realize that this was a song for them. Just how many of their loved ones had disappeared in the face of the apocalyptic disaster? There were far too many, so many that they couldn't even remember. They were the lonely living beings who looked up to the stars. An extremely beautiful accompaniment began to sound. The spectators suddenly discovered that Gu Qiu was sitting on the stage like a tranquil and beautiful woman, and she was playing the harp for the man beside her. I pray for a transparent heart and tears in my eyes. Give me the courage to believe again. Oh, to embrace you beyond the lies. The climax sounded, and all the spectators felt a layer of goosebumps. And Lin's voice seemed to have a peculiar penetrating power, and it carried with it a special kind of magic, hope, and wish as he sang to his heart's content. Every time I can't find the meaning of existence, every time I'm lost in the night, oh, the brightest star in the night, please guide me to you. And Lin's voice was still drifting through the air. The spectators had tears streaming down their faces. They were struggling, and they had to survive even if they had to change their life forms. They couldn't find the meaning of existence. They were situated in the last lonely city of this destroyed world, and they had to endure endless loneliness and darkness. And Lin continued to sing. However, the spectators began to disappear one by one. They disappeared into their seats, as if they had never existed. And Lin didn't seem to care and continued to sing. Ing Bao, who was softly singing with tears streaming down her face, also disappeared. And Lin was still singing passionately. The artists on the stage also disappeared one by one. Finally, Gu Qiu, who was accompanying him, also disappeared, and the accompaniment came to an abrupt end. The stage was very empty. There was no one in the spectators' seats. Perhaps they had never existed in the first place. The people on the stage were still singing. What Lin saw was the red ink workshop that had even lost its light. The lanterns and candles were extinguished, and the divine light had dissipated. The only light was the stars. It was as if he was situated under the starry sky, in a dark and silent 99-story pavilion. The people below the stage were gone, and the people on the stage were singing softly. Did everything really not exist? The brightest star in the night sky. Can you hear me? The one who looks up to you, the loneliness and sighs in the bottom of my heart. Chapter 22-23. And Lin finished the song with the utmost sincerity in his heart. He didn't need to use any extraordinary singing techniques, and he didn't even need to incorporate his Tao realm into this song. This song was very suitable for this world. After the song ended, everything returned to normal. There was the luxurious red ink workshop that seemed to stand eternally on the continent. There were lights that were warmer and more beautiful than the stars in the sky. There were sobbing spectators, as well as Gu Qiu, whose eyes had already turned red. And Lin bowed to the spectators. The spectators responded with applause. "Thank you," the Red Emperor said in a soft voice. "Thank you for showing me the most dazzling artistic civilization in the ancient Tai Chu realm." And Lin also said in a soft voice. "You knew." The Red Emperor was a little surprised. And Lin pointed at the special flower garland on his head with a smile. "Didn't you tell me of your own accord? I just want to try my luck because I saw how special you were. Those who understand will naturally understand, and those who don't, I'll just treat it as a beautiful piece of art." The Red Emperor smiled, and Lin knew that the Red Emperor already knew that he was from the Tai Chu continent. The flower garland on his head possessed the power of eternity, and it was used to store some information regarding culture and art. It was like a USB flash drive that contained a huge amount of information. It carried the remnants of a continent's civilization and was extremely precious. The performance concluded. Raucous applause erupted again. However, no one was cheering anymore. No one wanted to destroy the special meaning of the performance. Lin also slowly exited the stage amidst the applause. At this moment, he was patted on the shoulder again. Lin saw that Gu Qiu was walking gracefully behind him. There was a slight blush on her gentle and beautiful face. Dabao, I want to ask you for a favor. The woman looked at Lin with an uneasy expression. Go ahead, Gu Qiu. Lin had a nonchalant expression on his face. The song you sang just now was very good. So, can I use this song to write a word? Gu Qiu asked expectantly as she looked at Lin with her limpid eyes. Lin was dumbstruck. Using a song to write a word? What kind of operation was that? Can't I? Gu Qiu saw Lin's disappointed expression. Of course, Lin replied with a smile. Hearing this answer, Gu Qiu finally smiled. Thank you. Lin really didn't expect that Red Ink Workshop would be so conscious of artistic copyrights. It wasn't even a cover song. Instead, it was merely creating a word based on this song. They actually had to actively seek the opinion of the singer before they could do so. This small matter made Lin like this Red Ink Workshop even more. Big Brother Dabao, I didn't expect you to really do it. You did everything you said. From today onwards, I will be your hardcore fan. Ying Bao took the initiative to run to Lin and said excitedly, I never brag. After all, I've always been awesome. Lin smiled. Glaring at Lin, Ying Bao grumbled, Big Brother Dabao, don't curse. You're now a celebrity, so you have to pay attention to your image. Lin smiled, but didn't say anything. He didn't have the burden of being an idol. In Taichu continent, no matter how much he was deified, he could still live as he pleased. In any case, even if he were to pick his nose while walking on the street, he would be praised for his elegant movements and his carefree character. At this moment, the celebrities backstage all swarmed up and congratulated him enthusiastically. Compared to their previous attempts to curry favor with him, they were more respectful now. They were afraid that Lin would take revenge on them. With Lin's current status, it would be a piece of cake for him to mess with any celebrity that wasn't a celebrity. One had to realize that many of these people had treated Lin coldly and even mocked him. And Jin Feihong's underlings had even insulted Lin before. This was a F*King big deal. What was the consequence of insulting a celebrity? They shuddered at the thought of it. Right now, they could only try their best to curry favor with him or hide in a corner and tremble. Lin naturally ignored them. They were just a bunch of small fries. It would be too degrading to chase after them and beat them up. Your Majesty, Jin Feihong and his underlings made things difficult for me when I came. They beat me up and insulted me. You have to stand up for me. Lin pointed at the people in front of him with a worried expression. Oh, there's such a thing? The Red Emperor was stunned. Jin Feihong's legs immediately turned to jelly. I'm innocent. Your Majesty, I only threatened Liu Dabao. I didn't beat him up. You dare to threaten the top celebrity of Moulin Rouge. The Red Emperor raised his brows. Jin Feihong. Jin Feihong's underlings were scared **. They all knelt down and begged for mercy. The other trainees and celebrities also cut ties with Jin Feihong and added insult to injury. Just like that, Jin Feihong and his underlings were ordered to be taken away by the Red Emperor. Liu Dabao was the top celebrity of Moulin Rouge, and he had a bright future. It was just a celebrity. Even if it was a top celebrity, if he offended the top celebrity, he could only suffer. The Red Emperor helped Lin vent his anger. Lin felt very comfortable. Jin Feihong had bullied many artists before him. If it wasn't for Lin's talent, he would have been bullied by that bastard. Now that Jin Feihong was being punished, it could be said to be very satisfying. At this moment, there was a sudden noise from backstage. A majestic voice was heard. King Bai is here. Then, a fat man from the Dragon Clan swaggered over. Beside him was King Bai's son, who had just shouted King Bai is here. King Bai was the mayor of the 6th district. His arrival made the artists a little nervous. The fatty from the dragon clan walked proudly in front of the beautiful woman in red. Only then did he show a hint of respect. He bowed slightly and said, "Red Emperor." The Red Emperor bowed back and said, "King Bai, I wonder why you have come to this place." Before King Bai spoke, his son pointed at Su Chan and excitedly said, "I want to take her as a concubine. Please allow it, Red Emperor." After he said that, everyone was shocked. Su Chan's cold expression was difficult to maintain. She could not help but take a few steps back. "This?" The Red Emperor looked troubled. "What?" "Su Chan is not the top celebrity," King Bai said. "Why are you hesitating? Don't worry. If she marries into the Bai family, she will be like a carp leaping over the dragon gate. We will not mistreat her." Lin blinked and couldn't help but say, "She's a dragon. Why would she need to leap over the dragon gate?" The artists were shocked. Liu Debao dared to talk back to King Bai. When King Bai heard this, he immediately turned his gaze to Enlin. His son excitedly shouted at Enlin, "Dad, I want him to cook for us. Even if he is the top celebrity, I want him. The food he cooks is too delicious." Enlin coldly laughed and said, "Little fatty, don't always think about eating. Look at you. You should lose some weight." "You dare to call me fatty?" When Fat Dragon heard this, he suddenly looked angry. "Do you know who I am? It is your honor to cook for us." Enlin coldly looked at Fat Dragon and shook his head. "You do not deserve it." Chapter 22-24. Enlin's merciless words caused everyone's expressions to freeze. F***CK. After becoming the number one, his words were actually so arrogant. The surrounding artists looked at Enlin with admiration and pity. They admired Enlin for doing something that they did not dare to do. He was very courageous, and it was a pity that such an artist with a limitless future was about to die young. Sure enough, Little Dragon Fatty exploded in anger. "How dare you? You're the number one, and you dare to speak to me like that? Capture him, father, let's capture him. Just use the name of insulting the district chief. This crime is enough." Little Fatty Dragon was probably used to being arrogant. He immediately pulled the Dragon Emperor's hand and shouted. Enlin's expression remained calm and collected as he turned toward the Red Empress, as if he was waiting for her reaction. Without any hesitation, the Red Emperor stood in front of Enlin. His gaze turned cold. "Impudent! Dragon Yaksha, do you know whose territory this is? Do you have a right to speak here?" An extremely frightening aura suddenly exploded. The previously arrogant little fatty dragon was suddenly shocked, speechless by that aura. He hid behind the Dragon Emperor in fear and shouted, "Father, she bullied me." Enlin was completely speechless. Which family had raised this gigantic infant? Wasn't the mighty Dragon Emperor ashamed to bring a son like this out with him? However, something that shocked him even more happened. The Dragon Emperor actually released an extremely powerful aura as well, fighting against the Red Emperor as an equal. He revealed a bloodthirsty smile. "Red Emperor, what's the point of bullying a child? If you have the ability, come and exchange a few blows with me." The Red Emperor frowned and said coldly, "I'll say it now. You can't bring Liu Debao away, and you can't bring Su Chan away either." "Ha ha, good. The Red Emperor has the ability. Then I'll challenge you to a district chief's challenge." The Dragon Emperor threw out a copper coin-like object that was glowing with divine light. In an instant, the Dragon Emperor and the Red Emperor disappeared on the spot. Then, in the sky above, outside the transparent barrier, two extremely valiant figures appeared. A golden dragon covered the starry sky with a majestic aura, roaring continuously. A streak of brilliant red divine light soared into the universe. Boom, boom, boom. Both sides began to fight fiercely. As soon as the battle started, it was an earth-shattering scene. They're fighting. Oh my God, why are the two mayors fighting? The artiste didn't expect that Hong Huang would protect Enlin like this. And even more so, they didn't expect that the usually respected district chief would hit him just like that. When Su Chan saw this scene, her eyes turned red. She directly walked in front of Enlin and bowed to express her gratitude. She knew that if not for Enlin, the Red Emperor would not have protected her. In fact, Enlin was dumbfounded. He did it because he had some ulterior motives, but he didn't expect the two seemingly friendly mayors to fight without any hesitation. From the looks of it now, the Dragon Emperor probably had this in mind when he brought little fatty dragon out. He knew that his son was a troublemaker, so he brought his son out. The little fat dragon had already run to the railing, shouting at the battle in the sky, as if he didn't know what he was doing. Why are they fighting like this? What's the matter with the mayor's challenge? And Lin found that this battle was not as simple as it seemed. At this time, Guccio came over and said softly, "I'm afraid you don't know that the Holy Land of Taichu originally had 23 districts," and Lin blinked. Huh? Now, there are only 10 districts left because the mayor of a district challenged the mayor of another district. If he can defeat the mayor of that district, he can merge that district into one. However, because the mayor has the home field advantage, it is extremely difficult to defeat him. Thus, the Holy Land of Taichu has maintained the status quo for a long time. Guccio looked up at the battle in the sky with a worried expression. Now the Dragon Emperor suddenly launched an attack. I wonder why, and Lin suddenly thought of the heavenly light goddess, and his expression changed slightly. Right at this moment, the Red Emperor's attacks became more ferocious. With the help of the home field advantage, he easily wounded the Dragon Emperor. An earth-shattering crimson blade sliced through the Dragon Emperor's body. The golden dragon wailed in anguish and fell to the ground. Everything seemed to have been settled, and Lin could see that the Dragon Emperor and the Red Emperor were both at the Tao integration pinnacle stage. But the Red Emperor could even unleash the power of the God of Creation stage by relying on the home field advantage. However, right at this moment, a golden light shot out from the Dragon Emperor's body. The Dragon Emperor's aura suddenly became extremely holy and vast. The Red Emperor held 2 crimson swords in his hands and slashed toward the Dragon Emperor. 2 sword projections descended like a cross, as if they were 2 sword projections that had split the starry sky into 4 parts. However, the powerful sword projections were easily vanquished by the Dragon Emperor with a gentle flick of his tail. "Ha ha! Red Emperor, I've obtained a new power. You're no match for me." The Dragon Emperor was like a ball of golden light as he crashed into the Red Emperor's body. The Red Emperor swung his swords, but he was unable to even break through the Dragon Emperor's dragon scales. Instead, he was forced into retreat by a terrifying power. This is the power of light. And Lin's eyes narrowed slightly, and he was even more certain of his speculation. "Hurry up and go to the Heavenly Book Pavilion." The Red Emperor's urgent voice traveled into Enlin's ears through voice transmission. "Why did you choose me?" Enlin asked after a moment of thought. "That woman calls herself the power of light, but she's a destroyer. However, you're different. I heard something different from your song, so I chose you. Can I trust you?" The Red Emperor's voice traveled into Enlin's ears. Enlin took a deep look at the woman in the red dress who was being suppressed by the golden dragon and nodded. "I hope that all of you can survive. I'll stop her." When the Red Emperor heard this, a relieved smile finally appeared on her beautiful face. At this moment, Enlin had already turned to leave. "Big Brother DeBeo, where are you going?" Ing Bao immediately ran after Enlin upon seeing that he wasn't fighting like the other celebrities. "I'm going to the Heavenly Book Pavilion," Enlin replied. "Heavenly Book Pavilion?" Ing Bao covered her mouth with an incredulous expression. "The 2 emperors of the Holy Land are fighting, but you're going to read?" Enlin glanced at the adorable Ing Bao and flicked her forehead with a smile. "Don't worry, I'm a very fast reader." Soon, he arrived at the entrance of the Heavenly Book Pavilion. The 2 elderly men were still standing silently at the entrance, exuding Tao integration stage energy fluctuations. And Lin walked over. However, the 2 elderly men suddenly spoke. "Stop! You haven't obtained the right to enter the Heavenly Book Pavilion. Anyone who trespasses will be killed." And Lin was slightly taken aback upon hearing this. He pointed at the garland on his head. "I'm already the star. The star is only the basic requirement. You must also be an artist who has made significant contributions to Red Ink Workshop. Only then will you have the opportunity to enter the Heavenly Book Pavilion." One of the elderly men said lightly. and Lin was stunned. Significant contributions? He had just become the star. How could he have made significant contributions? It's all right, big brother DeBeo. You'll enter the Heavenly Book Pavilion sooner or later. There's no need to rush, right? Bao comforted him. No, I don't have time. And Lin gritted his teeth. Use mine. At this moment, a gentle and soothing voice sounded. Guccio had already appeared beside Lin. There was a peaceful smile on her face. I still have one more chance to enter the pavilion. I'll give it to DeBeo. Chapter 22-25. This. The two elders looked at each other. After hesitating for a few seconds, they finally nodded and agreed to Guccio's method. Guccio gave them something that looked like a copper coin. After they accepted it, they took a step to the side and looked as though they were allowing Lin to enter. You only have one day. You must cherish it. Guccio looked at Lin and smiled. Thank you, Fairy Guccio. Lin expressed his gratitude. He did not expect Guccio to help him at this time. The battle outside was so interesting. Why didn't Guccio go and watch? Instead, she followed him. Could it be that she liked him? The number of times he could enter the pavilion must be very precious. He had to find an opportunity to repay Guccio in the future. Lin walked into the Heavenly Scripture Pavilion. Once he walked through the door, he discovered that there were actually many bookshelves in front of him. They were arranged in a circular manner and looked like circles of rings. There were many books piled up on the bookshelves. Just by looking at it, there were tens of millions of books on each floor. The total number of books on the 9th floor was probably more than 100 million. And Lin picked up one of the books. This book was only slightly thicker than a piece of paper. How much content could it contain with such a small thickness? On the cover of the book, the words "Beauty of Music" were printed in gold. The author was Yun Xian, and Lin flipped open the cover of the book, and countless melodies and the true intent of music suddenly appeared in his mind. There were also tens of thousands of musical scores, including all types of vocal techniques, as well as all types of artistic conception descriptions. This method of projection, and Lin's expression changed drastically. A storm was set off in his heart. He felt a sense of familiarity from this consciousness projection. It was the system's method of projection. When he wanted to comprehend a certain musical technique, that power would slowly seep into his mind and become one with his life, becoming his ability. This was very similar to the system's method of instilling power. It was just that the speed was much slower. This method had an advantage. Information was not only transmitted through words, but also through consciousness, technique, spirit, and Tao. Once it was imparted, it would be imprinted in one's life and would be hard to forget. Could it be that the one who built the Heavenly Book Pavilion and the one who gave him the system were the same person? And Lin looked at the densely packed books in front of him. Apart from these books, there was nothing special. Could it be that the thing that the Heavenly Light Goddess wanted was hidden among these books? However, even though Lin was a Tao integration stage, super mighty figure, he would only be able to read a few hundred to a few thousand books in a day at most. It would take an unimaginable amount of time to completely comprehend all of these books. It's hard to increase the speed at which I absorb this knowledge. Do I have to go all out and use all my strength to learn? In this way, will the backlash from the heavenly Tao of this world directly affect me? And Lin frowned and fell into deep thought. The books before him included astronomical history, Taoist spells, and immortal spells, as well as masterpieces of art and the wisdom of the myriad races. Their method of conveying information was through the special consciousness within the book. It was as if there was an expert in the book who was enlightening him. Then, could the speed at which this consciousness was conveying information be related to the state of the recipient? He discovered that when he absorbed information, the speed at which he absorbed information was not uniform. In fact, it would even change slightly as he breathed. With this thought in mind, Lin silently activated the 5 elemental body. A golden ring appeared behind him, and his aura changed completely. In an instant, a huge amount of information flowed into his mind, and Lin was elated. This method worked. His speed increased by 10 times. Boom, boom, boom. suddenly heaven and earth shook violently. Even the books around him began to tremble slightly. And Lin was startled. He thought that he had caused trouble. However, after carefully sensing the situation, he realized that the battle between the Dragon Emperor and the Red Emperor had spread to this place. This is bad. Although the Red Emperor has the power of the Eighth Region, she is no match for the Dragon Emperor who possesses the power of light. She won't be able to hold on for long, let alone one day. She might not even be able to hold on for 15 minutes. And Lin's expression became even more solemn as he sensed the situation outside. What other states were there that were easier to absorb? And Lin suddenly thought of his darkness. Darkness had the most terrifying and powerful devouring effect. Would there be a miraculous effect when combined with the enlightenment of the books? And Lin hesitated for a moment, but he still decided to take the risk. Darkness, in the name of the heavenly Tao, I order you to come out. A divine seal appeared on Lin's forehead. A black feather robe suddenly appeared, fluttering in the wind as if it could suck in everything around it, including light. At the same time, heaven and earth instantly turned dark. There were only countless books floating in the air, in the same space-time as in Lin. The concealment formation of the heavenly book pavilion suddenly lit up, but it soon dimmed again. And Lin seemed to have sensed something. Indeed, after getting permission to enter the heavenly book pavilion, the concealment formation's hostility towards him would be greatly reduced, and it would even recognize him as an ally. Even if he used such an extremely dangerous spell, it would not cause much of a backlash at this moment. The book in front of him completely dimmed, and all the contents of the book were deeply imprinted in his mind. In that instant, and Lin mastered a complete set of vocal techniques, and he could even imitate the singing techniques of over 10,000 different living beings. I've increased my speed by over 10,000 times. An expression of incredulity appeared on Lin's face. Not only that, but I can also, darkness spread outward, enshrouding over 10,000 books, then 100,000, a million, 10 million, tens of millions. In the end, all of the books have been enshrouded by darkness. Boom! A terrifying amount of information, as well as abilities and techniques, surged into Lin's mind in a frenzy. One had to realize that each and every book here represented the essence of different species, and a Tao integration stage mighty figure could study and absorb them for several minutes. But what did it mean for close to 100 million books to transmit information at the same time? Any other god of creation would feel as if their brains were about to explode in the face of such a huge amount of information. However, Lin was different. After activating darkness, his entire body was like a bottomless pit, and he would absorb as much information as he could. No matter how vast the amount of information was, no matter how vast the Tao realm and true intent was, he would be able to absorb all of it. He had thought that it would take him a long time to absorb all of the information, but it only took him a minute to absorb the essence of close to 100 million books. At this moment, Lin could sense the magnificence of the ancient Tai Chu realm civilization. He could sense the vast amount of beautiful art that was available to him. At the same time, he was struck by a sense of heartache for the struggles and tragic endings of countless living beings. What kind of dire straits had they been forced into in order to transform their lives into something like this? They were nothing when they didn't look, and they could only exist when they looked. This kind of life form was already the greatest compromise they could make toward survival. It was undoubtedly the case that the ancient Tai Chu realm civilization had been forced into a precipice, and if they took another step forward, they would meet their eternal end. What the heavenly light goddess was going to do was extract the shattered heavenly Tao and complete the final step, which was to completely destroy the ancient Tai Chu realm. That's right, the heavenly light goddess was going to make sure that they didn't even have a chance to stand on the precipice. Chapter 22-26. And Lin stood at the center of the hundreds of millions of books and sensed everything around him. The Holy Land of Tai Chu was the last remnant of civilization in the ancient Tai Chu realm. It was the place where the heavenly Tao fluctuated the most violently after the heavenly Tao collapsed. Perhaps the heavenly Tao was also struggling to not be destroyed. The heavenly Tao and the heavenly Tao are very close. Perhaps I'm able to absorb information from the books so quickly not because of darkness, but because of a paramount heavenly god. And Lin thought of the heavenly light goddess. She was most likely trying to use her heavenly god power to absorb information from the books, but she was severely injured by the secret restriction. The heavenly Tao didn't want to die, but only the heavenly Tao could sense the fragments of the heavenly Tao. The heavenly light goddess could sense and absorb the fragments of the heavenly Tao very easily due to her special characteristics. If it weren't for the fact that Enlin was a traitor among the heavenly gods, the heavenly light goddess would have succeeded sooner or later. He didn't know whether this was a coincidence or an inevitability. Enlin felt like fate was not only playing tricks on people, but even the paramount heavenly Tao seemed to be guided by fate. I don't care. I can't let the heavenly light goddess succeed. She's willing to destroy the entire ancient Tai Chu realm in order to obtain a weapon. How could she do such a heartless thing? I wonder whose light she wields. And Lin walked toward the center of the heavenly book library. It was undeniable that a weapon created from the heavenly Tao would be extremely terrifying. Each of its attacks was imbued with the power of an entire world. The heavenly Tao could only be used by the heavenly Tao. At the same time, it was the most suitable weapon for the heavenly Tao to wield. And Lin walked toward a certain place in the heavenly book library and began to carve out a spell formation with his bare hands. That's right. After absorbing the information from all of the books, he knew where the true heavenly book was. There was a heavenly book library in all 10 regions, and each heavenly book library contained a heavenly book. The heavenly book was the embodiment of the heavenly Tao. The heavenly Tao had avoided self-destruction in a very special way. And Lin's spell formation incorporated the history of astronomy, geography, and civilization, as well as the beliefs of all living beings in the 8th region. The spell formation merged into the void, and a peculiar fluctuation suddenly appeared. Then, a book glowing with pure white light appeared in front of Enlin. When Enlin held the book in his hand, it was as if he was holding a world. The invisible weight made his body and divine soul bear unimaginable pressure. This is the broken heavenly Tao. Why does this feeling of destruction excite me? Enlin was a little surprised as he sensed the condition of his body. Darkness represented destruction and nothingness. The power of darkness in his body liked the state of death of the broken heavenly Tao very much. It even evoked its origin. This was a little scary. Could it be that darkness was the symbol of the heavenly Tao's state of destruction? We can't let the heavenly light goddess get her hands on this. As long as the heavenly book is still the heavenly book, the holy land of Tai Chu can continue to exist in this world. But the problem is, where should I put it? If I can't put in my storage ring, then do I have to carry it with me? And Lin muttered to himself. It was also at this moment that a clear and mesmerizing voice suddenly sounded beside him. Giant and Lin shuddered upon hearing this. Little Na, that's right, it's me. I can sense something missing from the divine mirror world from this book. Can you give it to me for safekeeping? And Lin was ecstatic to hear this. Of course you can, but you can't harm the heavenly book, little Na. This is the fate of the holy land of Tai Chu. And Lin added after a moment of thought. Don't worry, Giant and Lin. I'm only here to read and sense it. Tina's pleasant voice sounded, and Lin finally agreed upon hearing this. Tina needed the heavenly book, and he needed to keep it safe. Wouldn't it be the best if he could place the heavenly book in the divine mirror world? That was a place that the heavenly light goddess couldn't even enter. How could Lin miss out on this opportunity to kill 2 birds with 1 stone? All of a sudden, spatial ripples surged through the air. The power of the 2 realms began to appear. A pair of slender, fair hands emerged from the ripples and held the heavenly book in Lin's hands as if it were some extremely precious treasure. Wait for me, Giant and Lin. I'll make this world a better place. Little Na's promise reverberated in his ears. Immediately afterward, the heavenly book and the pair of hands disappeared. Nothing out of the ordinary happened during this entire process, and the concealment restrictions were not triggered. This is going way too smoothly. Am I the one everyone is waiting for? And Lin smiled and began to walk out of the Heavenly Book Library. Outside the Heavenly Book Library, Ing Bao was watching the battle between the two district mayors through the semi-transparent dome. The battle was extremely intense and terrifying, attracting the attention of all living beings in the 10 districts. The entire sky had been destroyed by them. If it weren't for the Holy Land of Taichu's light barrier, the Holy Land of Taichu would have been razed to the ground a dozen times over. No one would be stupid enough to do anything else in such a catastrophic battle. Of course, that was excluding a certain weirdo who still wanted to read in the midst of a great battle. Ing Bao thought of that man and couldn't help but complain. Seriously, Dabao is still thinking about reading at a time like this. This is a major event that can topple the entire world. Can't he be a little more concerned? Guccio was also a little emotional. He really is a weirdo. Others can remain calm even if Mount Tai collapses in front of them, but he's even more impressive. He can still read even if Mount Tai collapses in front of him. When he comes out, the world will change, right? Ing Bao snorted softly. Yeah, the Red Emperor can't hold on any longer. A hint of sadness flashed through Guccio's eyes as she looked at the heavily wounded woman in the sky. If the Red Emperor was defeated, the 8th District would have a new leader. From then on, there would be no more 8th District, and their fate would be decided by the Dragon Emperor. How tragic would that be? Of course, if they hated the Dragon Emperor, they could also transfer to other districts. After all, they were the stars and had an extremely high degree of freedom. However, it was hard to say for Ing Bao and Su Chan. Guccio could leave, but this was her home. She would be very disappointed and unwilling to leave just like that. She wanted to resist and help the Red Emperor, but they were powerless to do anything about what was happening in front of them. At this moment, the golden dragon in the sky spat out a ray of light at the Red Emperor. The light illuminated the world, pure and holy. The Red Emperor crossed his swords to block, but in the end, he still couldn't withstand the power of the golden dragon's breath. The power of light invaded his body, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood and fiercely collide with the light barrier of the Holy Land. Almost all the living beings cried out in alarm. They knew that the Red Emperor couldn't hold on any longer. At this moment, a man in white walked out of the Heavenly Book Pavilion under the surprised gaze of the two guards and came to the side of the woman who was nervously clenching her fists. Ing Bao, how's the battle situation? It's over. The Red Emperor can't hold on any longer. Ing Bao said with red eyes. Suddenly, she seemed to have sensed something. Her delicate body trembled, and she turned to look at her side. Then, an expression as if she had seen a ghost appeared on her face. Chapter 22-27. Big Brother to Bao. Why did you come out? Ing Bao pointed at Enlin as if he had seen a ghost. Enlin blinked and said, Why did I come out? I came out naturally after I finished reading the books. Don't tell me I was going to sleep in there. Guccio's face showed a hint of annoyance. It hasn't even been half an hour since we went in, and you say you finished reading the books? Do you know how rare it is to enter the Heavenly Book Pavilion? I really regret giving up a chance to enter the Heavenly Book Pavilion for you. The woman, who had always been as gentle as water and rarely showed many expressions, blushed for the first time. An angry expression appeared on her face, and even the rims of her eyes were red and rippling with tears. She felt that the precious thing she had given up was mercilessly ruined by this man in front of her. It was ruined in front of her. We have some misunderstandings. Actually, I really finished reading all the books. Enlin tried to explain. He couldn't let others feel that his good intentions were all fed to the dogs. However, at this moment, the Dragon Emperor in the sky roared and began to pounce on the heavily injured Red Emperor again. The golden light seemed to cover the heaven and earth, and its power was extremely terrifying. We'll talk about it later. Enlin, who was explaining, suddenly disappeared on the spot. Guccio originally felt a little better when she saw Enlin explaining so anxiously. However, he suddenly disappeared again, and she could not help but stomp her feet in anger. Red Emperor, everything is over. The Dragon Emperor opened his huge mouth and fell from the sky, wanting to pounce on the woman in front of him who was like a withering flower. The Red Emperor clenched his teeth and wanted to stand up to resist, but the vast and powerful light that seemed to have no end made her feel despair. The golden dragon fell, and the world became bright. Suddenly, a black figure blocked in front of the Red Emperor. In front of the light that covered everything, this black that was so deep that it was completely unaffected. It was so deep that billions of people could not even ignore it. A chef came to block the way. You're courting death. The Dragon Emperor looked at the person who came, and his eyes were filled with disdain. He roared even more and fell towards Enlin, completely crushing him. Enlin only stretched out a palm. Bam! The palm collided with the gigantic dragon head. It wasn't as easy as he had imagined. The Dragon Emperor felt as though his head was going to explode. Half of his head caved in from the force of the palm. At this moment, the black shockwave spread out from the contact surface in a ring shape, engulfing and erasing the overbearing and insufferably arrogant light energy that was rushing towards them. A ring that looked like a dark sun suddenly appeared in the bright sky. All the living beings were shocked as they stared blankly at the man in the sky. This, Yunqian's pretty face revealed an unconcealable shock. This figure seems familiar. F***CK? Isn't that Liu Debao who performed the cooking dance? The Golden Luin Dance Empress started to doubt her own eyes. She didn't expect such a strange man to be able to block the Dragon Emperor's shocking attack with his bare hands. Not only him, but all the other artists were the same. Yingbao lightly covered her mouth. Guqiu also found it hard to remain calm. She had thought that the other party was afraid to face her and wanted to escape, but it turned out that the other party wanted to fight the Dragon Emperor. The darkness trembled and spread. The Dragon Emperor roared in pain and retreated frantically. When everyone saw his face clearly, they were shocked to discover that a large part of his head was missing, and his eyes were dripping with blood. It was an extremely miserable sight. On the other hand, Enlin was still standing on the spot without moving. Who gave you this power? Enlin looked at the Dragon Emperor and asked calmly. Roar. The Dragon Emperor didn't answer Enlin's question. He opened his mouth and a pure and overbearing light energy breath shot at Enlin. Enlin extended a single finger and pointed at the air where the light energy breath was. The darkness pierced through the light energy breath with an unstoppable force and shot into the Dragon Emperor's mouth, piercing through the Dragon Emperor's head. The Dragon Emperor's sorrowful wail echoed through heaven and earth once again. At this moment, the Dragon Emperor's body trembled, and his dragon tail suddenly swung toward Enlin with a tremendous force. The surrounding space was instantly flattened and distorted by the terrifying force. You're quite durable. Enlin grabbed the air with one hand, and the dragon tail that was swung toward him was caught by him. Then, he swung it toward the ground. The gigantic golden dragon was flung to the ground like a whip. Roar! The Dragon Emperor howled in pain. He looked at the man who was still holding onto his dragon tail, and despair appeared in his eyes for the first time. Are you going to tell me or not? If you don't, I'll let the darkness devour your body right now. Enlin looked at the Dragon Emperor and said calmly. In Red Ink Workshop, little fatty Dragon Yiksha watched as his father, who was invincible in his heart, was beaten up by that man who he had once called a chef. He felt as though his entire world was collapsing, and his legs unknowingly began to turn to jelly. If such a terrifying man wanted to settle scores with him, what would become of him? At the thought of this, little fatty felt his pants getting wet. Right at this moment, the Dragon Emperor screamed again. He realized that his tail was slowly being devoured by the darkness. After it was devoured, not only was the flesh and blood gone, even the bones were gnawed clean. This terrifying power really made him panic. I'll tell you, the Dragon Emperor yelled. It's that woman who calls herself the Heavenly Light Goddess. She gave me power and allowed me to take over all the districts. She planned all of this. All of the living beings in the Holy Land of Taichu were astonished upon hearing this. The living beings in the second district had the most intense reactions. They had witnessed how powerful the heavenly light goddess was, but they had also witnessed her being annihilated by the terrifying restrictions within the heavenly book pavilion. But now, not only was the heavenly light goddess not dead, but she was also able to control the district chiefs and become a mastermind behind all of this. All of the living beings couldn't believe this. However, they had no choice but to believe it when they saw the power that the Dragon Emperor was using. Everything seemed to make sense now. It really is the work of the heavenly light goddess. She didn't receive the approval of the heavenly book pavilion, so she wants to use the Dragon Emperor to unify all the districts and then unify the heavenly book pavilion. After seeing the real heavenly book, Lin understood that the heavenly book was capable of both intimacy and rejection. It would only acknowledge some of the top stars of the Red Ink Workshop. Even if the district head forcefully shoved someone to it, it would still reject them. If that was the case, what was the point of the heavenly light goddess doing all of this? Could it be that she wanted to unify all the districts and then perform as the star? That would indeed save some time. However, Lin couldn't bear the thought of the heavenly light goddess fighting for the star in person. Was this something that a supreme heavenly god should do? Was she trying to act cool? Chapter 22-28. Did the heavenly light goddess say anything else? Lin continued to interrogate. No, really. That's all she told me. She told me to do as she said, or she would kill me. The Dragon Emperor replied in a panicked voice. Lin made sure that the Dragon Emperor was telling the truth, and he swallowed all of the power of light within the Dragon Emperor's body before releasing the Dragon Emperor. I'll spare your life today, but if I see you continue to do evil, you'll end up like your tail next time. When the Dragon Monarch heard that he would be able to survive, he was extremely grateful. He grabbed his son and rushed toward the Heavenly Book Pavilion in the 6th District. The Dragon Emperor had already made up his mind. He would hide in the Heavenly Book Pavilion and never come out again until the dust settled. At this moment, the Red Ink Workshop artists were still in a daze. They looked up at the white-robed man in the sky and felt like he was becoming more and more powerful. However, they couldn't relate him to the famous Liu Debao. This was a completely King different scene. Thank you, Liu Debao. The Red Emperor smiled at Lin. I have to thank you as well. Thank you for trusting me. Lin nodded with a grateful expression as he looked at the breathtakingly beautiful woman before him. The battle had come to an end. However, all the living beings in the Holy Land of Taichu were still in shock. The battle between the two mayors was already shocking enough, but now, an unknown top-tier powerful being had appeared and defeated the mayors with ease. What kind of being was this top-tier powerful being? All of the mayors who were still in their respective districts were also a little panicked. Is this world going to change? The Snake Emperor of the 5th District murmured to himself as he looked at the white-robed man in the distance. Actually, this world is going to change ever since the heavenly light goddess appeared. The Spirit Fish Emperor of the 9th District shook his rainbow divine tail as he sighed with emotion. Change? We have no way out. One wrong step and we'll be doomed. The giant Xianwu of the 2nd District trembled with fear. Who will you support? The Martial Emperor of the 4th District asked. Haha, of course it's Liu Debao. This kind of expert is the one we should support. The 10th District's Black Emperor grinned. Light Sky God's power has absolute hope and freedom. Maybe she is not the destroyer we thought she was. King Bai the First Zone spread his 8 wings. He was bathed in the holy light. He spoke calmly as he spoke his thoughts. Each of the district chiefs was using their own special channel to communicate. At this time, Lin and the Red Emperor had already started to return to Red Ink Workshop. Their return caused all the living beings to cheer at the same time. One after another, the headliners came forward to congratulate them, and the way they looked at Lin gradually changed. Previously, they had thought that they were in the same industry, and some artists had even treated Lin with pride and the attitude of looking at the younger generation. However, how would they dare to do that now? The man in front of them was someone who could even beat up the Dragon Emperor. Many of the celebrities looked at Enlin with awe and reverence in their eyes. Lu DeBeo, W, who are you? Ingbao looked at the man in front of her and asked uneasily. Enlin looked at the woman in front of him, who was like a pregnant rabbit, and couldn't help but laugh. He walked forward and suddenly reached out to pinch the young girl's soft and bouncy cheeks. The young girl was so scared that she let out a squeal. He then said with a smile, "What? I only went to fight one battle, and you're already turning against me." I didn't." Ingbao immediately panicked and shook her head. Her cheeks were as red as an apple. In her eyes, Enlin was at least on the same level as the district chief. She didn't expect him to speak to her in such a tone. Her heart was racing. "Because of your interference, the Dragon Emperor and I didn't have a winner, but I believe the Dragon Emperor won't dare to cause trouble again. What do you plan to do next?" The Red Emperor looked at Enlin and asked in an extremely gentle tone. "The Heavenly Light God's target is the Heavenly Book in the Heavenly Book Pavilion, so I'll be one step ahead and protect the Heavenly Book first." Enlin answered truthfully. "Heavenly Book? You actually know about the Heavenly Book? Could it be that you've already seen the Heavenly Book in the Heavenly Book Pavilion?" The Red Emperor's beautiful eyes widened as she looked at the smiling man in front of her. There was a look of disbelief on her face. While you guys were fighting, I finished reading more than 90 million books and finally found a clue to dig out the Heavenly Book. Then I protected it." Enlin nodded and admitted. Gasp! Everyone couldn't help but take a deep breath at this moment, especially those who had entered the Heavenly Book Pavilion. They looked at Enlin as if they had seen a ghost. He finished reading more than 90 million books? And he did it while they were watching the battle? What kind of godly operation was this? So fast. Could it be that he really didn't lie to me, and he really finished reading all the books? Guccio stared at the man in front of her in a daze. She realized that there was actually such a person in this world. "I thought the Heavenly Book was only a legend. Who would have thought?" The Red Emperor looked up at the Heavenly Book Pavilion and sighed. Hearing this, Enlin was even more certain of his guess. The formation of the Heavenly Book Pavilion must have been secretly guided by an unseen big shot. At this moment, a little boy suddenly walked over with a smile. "Mr. Lu DeBeo, your performance amazed me. May I invite you to come to my 3rd district and perform for us as a VIP?" The little boy cupped his hands toward Enlin solemnly. How could I refuse an invitation from the Spirit Empress? This is exactly what I wanted, so it would be impolite to refuse. Enlin also smiled knowingly. Since the Heavenly Light Goddess wanted the Heavenly Book, then Enlin would take the Heavenly Book for now. Walk on the enemy's path and leave them with nowhere to go. "Big Brother DeBeo, why you're really leaving? Will you come back again?" Ingbao was no longer afraid after learning that Enlin was leaving. Instead, she blinked her big eyes and asked reluctantly, "Of course I will come back." Enlin nodded and said with a smile, "When I save the world, I will go back to the Red Ink Workshop." Ingbao couldn't help but laugh. "Bullshit." Just like that, Enlin said goodbye to the artists and the Red Emperor and followed the Spirit Empress to the 3rd district of the Holy Land of Taichu. The Holy Land of Taichu was actually not very large. It was divided into 10 districts, and each district was about the size of a big city. The only special feature was that the creatures in the cities were particularly powerful, and there were basically no weaklings. The most powerful person in the district was the district mayor. Each district mayor, with some kind of force in the district, could exert combat power comparable to the god of creation. They were the most important pillars of the Holy Land of Taichu and the gods in the eyes of the creatures. However, this image began to lose its balance after Enlin beat up the Dragon Emperor in public. The atmosphere of a storm enveloped the entire Holy Land of Taichu. A hole began to appear in the translucent film. Enlin and the Spirit Empress passed through the hole and came to the 3rd district. Chapter 22-29. The 3rd district was pretty much the same as the 8th district. The only difference would be the architectural style. There were many houses floating in the sky here, and most of them were round, looking like small floating balls. Our district's Heavenly Book Pavilion is located on the highest floating ball in the center of the city. There's also a large cultural and art center on it, called the Immortal Spirit Market. The Celestial Emperor pointed at the huge blue ball floating in the sky and said, "Immortal Spirit Market." And Lin looked at the ball in the sky, and a smile appeared on his face. "How do I enter the Heavenly Book Pavilion?" "I will hold an Immortal Spirit Night today. You have to be the star of the show according to the requirements. Only then will you be qualified to enter the Heavenly Book Pavilion," the Celestial Emperor said. "I still have to perform? Can't I go through the back door?" And Lin felt a headache coming on. "I'm sorry, you can't do that. This is the rule of the Heavenly Book Pavilion. Even I can't break the rule. Otherwise, you will be punished by the Heavenly Book Pavilion," the Celestial Emperor said helplessly. And Lin heaved a sigh of relief when he heard this. In that case, the Heavenly Light Goddess would have to perform too. "I can only be the organizer of the Immortal Spirit Night, but I have no right to interfere. I can't interfere with the voting or the number of stars participating. Otherwise, your title as the star of the show will have no effect on the Immortal Spirit Market," the Celestial Emperor explained. And Lin was curious. "How do you know all this?" The Celestial Emperor's mouth twitched, but he didn't say anything. However, and Lin got the answer from his expression. This kid had done something like this before, and Lin smiled and didn't ask any more questions. Under the Celestial Emperor's arrangement, he successfully became a trainee of the Immortal Spirit Market and prepared to participate in the Immortal Spirit Night tonight. The Celestial Emperor kept Lin's appearance a secret. He only announced to the public that a mysterious artist would also be participating in the Immortal Spirit Night. Soon night fell. The light barrier changed from the daytime simulation system to transparent. The real night and the stars began to appear. The third district was full of fireworks. Many spherical buildings floated in the sky, emitting colorful fluorescent light. They looked like colorful bubbles floating in the sky. This scene looked extremely dreamy and beautiful. However, the most beautiful thing was the large spherical building in the center, the Immortal Spirit Market. The Immortal Spirit Square was dark blue in color and looked enchanting. It wasn't ostentatious, and it wasn't as gorgeous as a few spherical buildings. However, the creatures of the third region loved it the most, and their gazes also lingered on it the most. It was because it was extremely pure and clean. With a single look, it felt as if one's soul had been cleansed. This was a completely different style from Red Ink Workshop. That night, all the higher-ups in Division 3 came to this place to watch the grand performance. The world was no longer peaceful, but this place was still filled with songs and dances. They have suffered enough. Therefore, when something big happened, they were still able to maintain a calm state of mind. Their hearts didn't fluctuate, and they even wanted to watch the show. How many headliners do you think will appear tonight? I don't know, but I want to see Feng Ling on stage. I've been thinking about her Language of the Wind for an entire year. Feng Ling, are you dreaming? She's the #1 star of the Immortal Spirit Marketplace. How can she show her face so easily? I haven't seen her perform in 3 years. Sigh. I actually want to see Lou DeBayo's cooking dance more. He's so powerful and talented. I wonder how elegant his cooking dance will be. Then you're dreaming even more. Who do you think he is? Just one performance is enough to shock the entire Holy Land. I'm so envious of the audience in Red Ink Workshop. The audience in the Immortal Spirit Marketplace was in a heated discussion, and they were in high spirits. The artistes began to appear one after another, and the scene ushered in waves of climaxes. The headliners were even more outstanding, showcasing their unique skills that amazed the audience. At this moment, Lin appeared under the watchful eyes of the audience. He held a pan in his left hand and a spatula in his right. The scene completely exploded before he even began his performance. Not only were the audience screaming, but even the artistes backstage and the headliners were screaming loudly. He's here, that man is here. The cooking dance had long been famous in the Holy Land of Taichu. And Lin's invincible strength when he brutally crushed the Dragon Emperor made this cooking dance even more legendary. Everyone longed for the opportunity to see Lin's cooking dance with their own eyes, but they didn't expect this day to actually come, and it came so fast and so unexpectedly. This kind of surprise even made some of the audience so excited that they wanted to go into shock. The fear and uneasiness of the audience that Lin had imagined did not appear. What appeared in front of him was a tsunami of cheers and shouts. Without a doubt, his arrival directly made the atmosphere in the immortal spirit marketplace reach its peak. Before the performance even began, he had already become the most attractive person on the immortal spirit night. Of course, the cooking dance still had to continue. The classic "Chicken You Are Too Fragrant" dance song began to appear, and Lin once again performed the legend of the cooking dance, and he successfully achieved his goal of bribing everyone by sharing the chicken with them. There weren't any top-tier stars on this night. There were only 3 ordinary stars on the Immortal Spirit Night to keep up appearances. Naturally, they were beaten to a pulp by Lin. Of the 60,000 tickets, Lin alone received more than 30,000 tickets, which was more than all the remaining artists combined. At the same time, he also received more than 5 times more tickets than the headliners who received the most tickets. It could be said that he completely crushed everyone else. At this time, the #1 headliner in the Immortal Spirit Marketplace, Feng Ling, learned that Lin was eager to enter the Heavenly Book Pavilion, so she generously gave Lin a chance to enter the Heavenly Book Pavilion, giving up her major contribution benefits. And Lin successfully entered the Heavenly Book Pavilion. History was always surprisingly similar, and Lin was still a little emotional. He didn't know why the top-tier headliners were so nice to him. Was it to form a good relationship? Did this mean that they had chosen him? After entering the Heavenly Book Pavilion, Lin did not waste any time. He immediately used the power of the Heavenly God of Darkness to absorb all the knowledge and Tao realm true meanings in the Heavenly Book Pavilion. It was good to have complete darkness. No matter how large the amount of information was, his brain was not afraid. It was like a bottomless pit, absorbing everything. And Lin's knowledge reserve skyrocketed once again. These books were very interesting. There were countless Tao spells and immortal spells, and even though they weren't of the highest caliber, there were some unique ideas and special Tao realms that could help Lin comprehend things by analogy. As a result, Lin's Tao integration stage cultivation base was on the verge of breaking through. Of course, the majority of the books were the civilizations and cultures of the various races. After Lin finished learning, he could even casually create a poem that would be passed down through the ages. He had read more than 10,000 books, and his pen was like a god. And Lin had already read more than 100 million books. He was a god. Chapter 22:30. And Lin briefly savored the knowledge he had just obtained. There was an unimaginable sense of fullness that made even his very soul feel fulfilled. Perhaps knowledge was the only thing that could truly enrich one's life. He shook his head and cast aside these complicated thoughts. Then, he began to make his way toward a certain location in the Heavenly Tome Pavilion, according to the revelation hidden within the hundreds of millions of books. He began to inscribe a complicated spell formation with his fingertips. The spell formation merged into the void, and a book glowing with a milky white light appeared before Lin's eyes. And Lin picked it up, and he instantly felt the weight of an entire boundless world. This book clearly had no pages, but its contents encompassed everything in this world. It was the ultimate embodiment of the entire world. This was a wonderful feeling, and Lin was even struck by the urge to completely possess it and own it. However, he quickly repressed that urge. He knew that if he really did that, then all of the living beings in the third region would be destroyed first. Giant and Lin, I'm here again. Next to him, a crack appeared in the void. Tina's intricate, flawless face peeked out from the spatial rift. Her cheeks were flushed red, and her emerald eyes stared unblinkingly at the heavenly tome in Lin's hand. There was a hint of yearning in her eyes. A nonchalant smile appeared on Lin's face as he handed the heavenly tome to Tina. Here, take it. Thank you, Giant and Lin. Tina accepted the heavenly tome with a wide smile. However, she didn't immediately disappear. Instead, she tilted her head to the side as if deep in thought. What are you thinking about? Just spit it out, and Lin said. Tina blinked. I can see that you seem to be quite troubled, Giant and Lin. Sigh. Have you encountered some kind of trouble? You can even tell that. and Lin was slightly startled. Of course, Tina's palm-sized body leaped out of her spatial rift and landed in front of Enlin. She placed one hand on her hip and pointed a finger at Enlin. Giant Enlin, your anxiety and impatience are written all over your face. Tell me about it, and perhaps little Na can help you. Enlin pondered for a moment before telling Tina about what the heavenly light god was going to do, his own situation, and the special characteristics of this world. I know that the heavenly book was formed from the shattered heavenly Tao of the ancient Tai Chu realm. However, who would have thought that the heavenly light goddess would use the shattered heavenly Tao as a weapon? Isn't that something only a demon of destruction would do? Tina put her hands on her hips and huffed with rage. Guang Guang feels that what she's doing is righteous. She's making a choice. Enlin sighed. Hence, Giant Enlin, the problem you're facing now is that you can't find her, but you're certain that she's already discovered you. Furthermore, you're afraid that she'll copy your method and obtain the heavenly book. Even if she only obtains the heavenly book from one district, it'll still bring a devastating disaster to all the living beings in that district. Is there nothing you can do to stop her? Tina asked in a crisp voice. That's the problem. It'll take far too long for me to collect the heavenly books one by one, and there's a very good chance that she'll obtain the heavenly books from the other districts as well. And Lin's brows furrowed as he said, in that case, I really won't be able to stop her from obtaining the heavenly book. Tina thought for a moment before asking, can you tell the district mayors of the other districts to temporarily suspend their performances until you come over? And Lin nodded. That's a good idea. However, the problem is that only the Spirit Emperor from the 3rd District, the Snake Emperor from the 5th District, the Demon Emperor from the 7th District, and the Red Emperor from the 8th District have contacted me. The district mayors of the other districts don't know what their attitudes are, and I'm afraid that they'll turn around and support the Heavenly Light Goddess. No way. Everyone knows that the Heavenly Light Goddess attacked the Heavenly Book Pavilion from the 2nd District and threatened the Dragon Emperor from the 6th District. How can there still be people who support the Heavenly Light Goddess? Tina was in disbelief. It's hard to say. Perhaps some people have been reformed by the power of light. A resigned smile appeared on Lin's face. In reality, the power of light of the Heavenly Light Goddess was imbued with boundless hope and justice. At the very least, all living beings felt very comfortable and yearned for it. In contrast, the power of darkness of the Heavenly Light Goddess was pitch black in color, and all living beings were terrified of being swallowed by it. Giant and Lin's concerns are not unfounded. Tina tapped her chin with a slender finger as she fell into deep thought. I got it. Tina's eyes suddenly lit up. What is it? And Lin was very excited. In his eyes, this was a hopeless situation. He was pleasantly surprised that Tina had a way out of this predicament. Actually, Giant and Lin, there's no need for you to fight for the heavenly books yourself, Tina said with a dainty smile. What do you mean? And Lin was dumbstruck. Can I just ask someone else to help me? Tina chuckled. Someone else to help me. And Lin's eyes also lit up. That's right. Can't I just ask someone else to help me obtain the heavenly books? I can temporarily transfer my power of darkness to the top dogs, and they can use their darkness to absorb knowledge before finding the location of the heavenly books. And Lin's expression suddenly darkened as he spoke. But the top dogs are only at the Tao integration stage. If they want to absorb over 100 million books in a short period of time, they'll need to possess an extremely powerful power of darkness. At the very least, they'll need to be more powerful than the Darkwing Emperor. However, they won't be able to absorb so much of my power of darkness, not even in a short period of time. If the Tao integration stage can't do it, then what about the God of Creation stage? Tina asked. Of course they can, but where are we going to find God of Creation stage helpers? And Lin suddenly raised his head to look at the smiling little fairy. You're right, Giant and Lin. I have 5 underlings of the God of Creation stage, and all of them can come here to help you obtain the heavenly books. Tina patted her chest. 5 underlings of the God of Creation. She was even more of a big brother than Lin was. That's great. Little Na, you really are my lucky star. And Lin faltered for a moment before hugging the little fairy in his arms with excitement. Tina rested her head against Lin's huge chest, and a joyful smile appeared on her face as she basked in his warmth. Little Na will definitely be able to do it. Tina was jumping around in the Heavenly Book Pavilion. However, the restrictions here were completely unable to detect her presence. Thus, Tina and Lin strutted out of the pavilion. Congratulations, Mr. Lou DeBayo. Did everything go well? Holy F***, what's with this fairy? The celestial sovereign was initially smiling, but he was given a massive fright at the sight of a little fairy sitting on Lin's shoulder, as if he had seen a ghost. Oh, her? She's my summoned beast. And Lin's expression remained unchanged. Hello, I'm Lou DeBayo's summoned beast, Tina. Tina waved a hand at the celestial sovereign with a smile. The celestial sovereign's lips twitched. What the F***? Did she really think he was a little kid? Chapter 22:31. The celestial monarch was completely dumbstruck. He had encountered an inexplicable situation. A living being had suddenly appeared in the Heavenly Book Pavilion, and it wasn't harmed by the restrictions. Instead, it had just swaggered out. This was the first time he had seen something like this. He wanted to ask for clarification, but Lin and Tina were both grinning from ear to ear, and they didn't want to tell him anything. He felt a little exasperated. You've already obtained the Heavenly Book, so the survival of our entire region is in your hands. What plans does Mr. Lou DeBayo have for us now? What's going to happen next is going to be even more beyond your imagination, and Lin replied. He contacted the Serpent Monarch and the Demon Monarch as he spoke and told them not to hold any performances for now. The Serpent Monarch and the Demon Monarch both readily agreed. That's enough, little Na. Let's begin, and Lin said with a smile. All right. Tina opened a gate of light with a dainty smile. In the instant that the gate of light opened, the celestial monarch was struck by a sense of familiarity. Right at this moment, a pair of slender and beautiful legs stepped through the gate of light. She had a pair of icy eyes, a pair of wings, and a fluttering black dress. This was a noble and aloof, dark-winged tribewoman. The woman surveyed her surroundings with curiosity before bowing to Tina. Blackstone pays his respects to the goddess. Immediately afterward, a man with crimson eyes and a pair of demonic horns on his head and a suit of shiny armor strode out with a pious expression. Flowing Gold pays his respects to the goddess. A ding-dong sound suddenly sounded. A green-skinned boy with 3 heads and a strange appearance floated out of it. What is this place? I don't know. Long live the goddess. The boy bowed to Tina in a meticulous manner. Then, clouds and mist began to rise into the air. A pure and flawless mermaid with translucent skin slowly swam out of the gate. She had a light pink fishtail and a light blue mole at the corner of her eye. A light and ethereal voice began to ring out. The sky is my pursuit, and the sea is my home. Goddess, why have you summoned me here? She looked up at the sky with a melancholy expression as she spoke, and no one knew what she was thinking. Then, an ordinary-looking stone suddenly rolled out from the door. After the stone rolled out, it didn't move or speak. Lu Ling Huang looked at the 5 living beings that had suddenly appeared in front of him and could not conceal the shock on his face. He realized that the beings before him were all extremely profound and unfathomable to the point that even he could not understand them. What was going on? What was going on? Why did they suddenly appear? Ling Huang's mind was filled with countless question marks. He looked at Lin for help, but he saw that Lin also had a shocked expression on his face. All right, everyone's here. Tina clapped her hands together. Jine and Lin, allow me to introduce them to you. She pointed at the noble and elegant black-winged woman and said, This is the paramount god of the dark-winged tribe, Blackstone. Blackstone nodded slightly at Lin without much expression. This is a paramount god of the true devils, Flowing Gold. Flowing Gold smiled heartily at Lin and waved his hand. This is a paramount god of the Void Spirit tribe, Spirit 3. The 3-headed boy floated around Lin. Hello, Big Brother. Don't call him Big Brother. You should call him Big Brother. He's a friend of our goddess. big brother is quite handsome. The three heads engaged in a lively discussion. Tina seemed to be accustomed to this three-headed boy's behavior, and she continued with a smile. This is a paramount god of the spirit fish clan, Tiani. A peerlessly beautiful mermaid swam toward Lin before caressing Lin's face with a slender hand. I can sense a very special aura from your body. Can you find a home for me? Air. Lin was at a loss. This is a paramount god of the stone tribe. Mou, Tina continued. Thump. A dull thump sounded from the round rock, which seemed to be a form of greeting. All right, allow me to introduce you to my god spokesperson. His words are equivalent to my words, and his name is Lin. Tina pointed at Lin as she spoke. Greetings, spokesperson Lin. Spokesperson Lin. Ah, I remember now. That's right. He's an ancient being. I didn't think he would still be alive. My God. Greetings, spokesperson Lin. Thump. All of the gods of creation extended warm greetings. They were looking at Lin in a different light. Lin was the most astonished among them all. This was the first time he had faced so many gods of creation at once. There were 5 of them. Including Tina, there were now 6 gods of creation. What kind of world could nurture so many gods of creation? Just how terrifying was Tina's world? Also, Tina was a god of creation, but they were also gods of creation. Why were they still so respectful toward Tina? They most likely already knew the truth about the divine mirror world. How had Tina managed to convince them to follow her so willingly? Lin was astonished, truly astonished. Never would he have thought that everything Tina had said was true. Furthermore, the words of these gods of creation had revealed so much information that he was beginning to doubt his own life. Of course, the celestial sovereign was even more astonished. Lin, isn't your name Ludibeo? Oh, Ludibeo is my nickname. Lin replied in a nonchalant manner. The celestial sovereign was completely dumbfounded. What the F***CK was a nickname. This explanation was extremely disrespectful. Did they take him for an idiot? And what was going on with all of these so-called paramount gods? Why were there suddenly so many powerful beings here? The celestial sovereign was far more powerful than anyone in the holy land of Taichu. However, he knew that even with the help of the 3 zones, any one of these beings could easily crush him. They were all extremely powerful beings. Next, I have a mission for all of you. The God spokesperson will bestow upon you a power, and this is what you should do. Tina began to recount what the gods of creation had to do, as well as the enemies they might face. And Lin had initially thought that they would either object or refuse. To his surprise, none of the 5 gods of creation refused. All of them accepted the mission with alacrity. And Lin began to inject the power of darkness into the bodies of the gods of creation. They were all astonished by the pure power of the heavenly Tao. This power, Blackstone couldn't help but let loose a nasal moan. I like it. As expected, the power of darkness was very attractive to the Darkwing tribe. And Lin knew how much power of darkness he had to give them in order for them to absorb all of the information in the book in a short time. This power was extremely vast, and if they couldn't handle it, they would be engulfed by the backlash of darkness. However, all 5 gods of creation were able to absorb his power without suffering any damage. Chapter 22:32. Huff, huff, huff. I'm so tired. And Lin lay on the ground, panting heavily. Imparting such a huge amount of power of darkness to the 5 powerful beings before him in one go had almost depleted all of the power of darkness within his body. As such, it would take a very long time for him to recover. Spokesperson Shun, are you feeling unwell? Do you want Tian to take a look at you? A light pink fishtail pressed lightly against Lin's body, and her beautiful face inched closer to Lin as she spoke in a gentle voice with concern in her eyes. As she spoke, Lin could even detect a refreshing fragrance emanating from her body. Don't be like this. I don't like this position. Lin was given a fright, and he immediately pushed Tian Yi away. Tian Yi's brows furrowed, as if she didn't know what she had done wrong. She looked at Lin with confusion in her eyes. Then what position do you like? Lin pulled out a divine pill and swallowed it in front of everyone. I like this position, do you understand? Tiani stared at Lin for a while before nodding. I understand. Immediately afterward, her storage ring flashed, and a divine pill appeared. She placed it into Lin's mouth. Spokesperson Shun, open your mouth. Do you like this position? Lin, did this mermaid sister misunderstand something? Why did it feel so stupid? Could a beautiful woman like her really obtain the title of the main attraction and enter the Heavenly Book Pavilion? Lin suddenly panicked. Even though he was panicking, he still swallowed the divine pill given to him by the mermaid. The enormous power of the pill began to quickly restore his energy. Lin stood up again and extended a slight bow. I'll be counting on you all. Don't worry. Spokesperson Shun will definitely complete our mission. Isn't it just the main attraction? Just watch us. All of the gods of creation were very confident. Spirit Emperor, I'll have to rely on you to arrange for them to become trainees in each district. Lin turned his head and looked at the Spirit Emperor, who was still in a daze. Okay, no problem. The Spirit Emperor came back to his senses and was very excited. He felt that he had made the right choice. Only Lin could be the savior of the Holy Land of Taichu. Just from the fact that he could get the help of so many top Genesis creators, he could tell that the other party's foundation was unfathomable. I still have some connections. The 1st, 2nd, 4th, 6th, 9th, and 10th districts all need a spot for trainees, right? The Spirit Emperor asked. Yes. And Lin nodded. If you encounter an emergency that you can't solve, remember to call me. I've already established a God of Creation connection with all of you, so I can instantly teleport to your side, Tina instructed. All of the gods of creation nodded in unison. Please come with me, the Celestial Sovereign said with a respectful expression. He couldn't afford to offend any of the gods of creation here. Thus, all of the gods of creation left with the Celestial Sovereign. And Lin looked at the departing figures. Big Sister Blackstone was cold and aloof. Flowing Gold was like an amiable uncle, and the 3 spirits were very lively as they asked the Spirit Emperor all sorts of questions. Tiani glanced at Lin with a sheepish smile on her face. Mou silently rolled away and didn't say anything. This lineup. Why do I feel like they're a little crazy? I acknowledge their cultivation bases and strength, but will they really be able to defeat the most talented A-listers? And Lin couldn't help but feel like this was a little unreliable. Especially that stone. He only made a single dong sound throughout the entire process. How was he going to perform? Giant and Lin, don't underestimate them. A faint smile appeared on Tina's face as she watched the departing figures in front of her. Time can bestow civilization, and their existences that have lived for countless years. Everything they've seen, heard, and thought will become the foundation for their stunning performance. Just wait for the good news from them. Even though Lin didn't feel like they were very reliable, he trusted Tina. All right, let's go to the 10th region. There were 6 regions with unclear attitudes, and the gods of creation had chosen 5 of them. Hence, Lin had to go to the last region. Only then would he be able to collect all of the heavenly books in the shortest time possible. There's still no news of the heavenly light goddess becoming the top talent. I hope I can make it in time. And Lin flew toward the 10th region under the guidance of a high-ranking official of the Celestial Sovereign. As for Tina, she silently entered the divine mirror world again. After a brief period of turbulence, the holy land of Taichu fell into a state of tranquility again. However, under the surface of the tranquility, turbulence had already begun to surge again. Perhaps it was to appease the panic of the living beings in the various regions, but all of them decided to hold large-scale cultural performances. 100 suns hung high in the sky, on the bustling streets. On the eve of the banquet, one talent scout after another began to discover potential talents. Immediately afterward, the golden teachers in the training rooms all looked shocked. Of course, their shock turned into ecstasy in the end. One trainee after another became one of the performers for the night. Night fell. The highlight of the holy land of Taichu's performance began, within the territory of the Bai Emperor in the 1st region. Next, we invite trainee Blackstone to perform for us, Hymn of the Night. An exquisitely beautiful woman descended gracefully to the sound of skepticism and surprise from the audience. She was like a celestial deity, and the atmosphere on the stage was instantly livened up. Meanwhile, within the territory of the Turtle Emperor in the second region, within the ruined Heavenly Sea Pavilion, Tion used her pink fishtail to create thousands of bubbles, and she began to sing the hymn of battle in a mermaid's voice that was completely unimaginable to the audience. This song made everyone cry. On the martial arts platform in the fourth region, the supreme god of the true demon tribe, Flowing Gold, displayed a set of extremely shocking fist techniques that stunned all the spectators. Some of the more powerful cultivators were so shocked that they couldn't come back to their senses for a long time. Within the Dragon Valley in the sixth region, the Dragon Emperor, who had just been bullied, saw a round stone step onto the stage. The stone didn't say anything. He just stood quietly in the center of the stage. Tens of thousands of spectators were at loss at first. Then they cursed angrily, and finally, they seemed to understand some philosophy of life. The Dragon Emperor's face was covered in tears as he fell into deep remorse. Within the territory of the Spiritual Fish Emperor in the ninth region, inside the Seashell Workshop, a child was performing a 3-act crosstalk, which made the audience burst into laughter. After laughing, they thought of the reality and sighed with emotion. Most of them even had tears in their eyes. Within the 10th region, inside the Dark Sun Workshop, Ludabeo once again made a stunning appearance, setting off an unprecedented frenzy. The Holy Land of Taichu was quiet that night, but the Holy Land of Taichu had one climax after another that night. In fact, it created a history. 5 legendary gods of creation all performed on the stage as trainees. This was definitely an event that would shock the world and be recorded in the annals of history. It was their joint efforts that created an invincible legend among the trainees. Chapter 2233. 3 living beings, 3 living beings, 3 living beings. Cheers erupted from the crowd. With 20,000 votes, 3 living beings successfully surpassed the number of votes of the top card and became the first god of creation to become a top card. It wasn't that he was the most powerful. Rather, his district was the first to begin the voting ceremony. 3 living beings proposed to go to the Heavenly Book Pavilion. One of the top cards of District 9 had a special liking for him and made a huge contribution to him, allowing him to successfully enter the Heavenly Book Pavilion. 3 living beings looked at the densely packed books in front of them. A small child like him stood at the center, appearing extremely insignificant. So many books, and each book contains an extremely large amount of information. No wonder Lord Messenger bestowed darkness upon us. Otherwise, how long would it take for us to continue reading? 3 living beings sighed with emotion. Darkness began to spread from the 3 living beings' bodies. Close to 100 million books were slowly engulfed, and their information was quickly absorbed. Oh, so painful. So much information is flowing into my head. One of the heads yelled in pain. Don't worry, we'll share your burden. Another head said in a serious tone. We 3 brothers will share our burdens. The third head was also very determined. Fortunately, we have 3 heads, so the pain isn't that intense. What would happen if it were someone else? It would definitely be excruciating, right? At the same time, Flowing Gold had already entered the Heavenly Book Pavilion. He tidied up his armor and looked at the books in the Heavenly Book Pavilion with interest. He even flipped through the books and used his own power to comprehend them. Wonderful. It's really wonderful. This method of storing and transmitting information is worth learning. He nodded incessantly, feeling like he had learned a lot. This place is not simple. It must have been created by a senior. Also, this world gives me a very strange sense of familiarity. Flowing Gold pondered for a while and couldn't think of anything. So he began to use darkness to absorb the information in the books. He was very cautious. First, he used the power of darkness to absorb the information in a book. The effect was astonishing. The absorption rate skyrocketed to an incredible level, and he finished eating a book in the blink of an eye. Only then did he spread the darkness to 10%, which was more than enough. Then 50%. His head was starting to hurt. He didn't have to cover 100% at once. It should be fine to split it into 2 portions and absorb it slowly, right? It's better for your health. Flowing Gold thought so, and then he did it. Yes, it's comfortable. Tiany's performance in the 2nd district was the most successful. The number of votes she received was 3 times more than the number of votes spent by the headliner. Without any suspense, she crushed the entire field. Even the record set by Lin was broken by her. Tiany had always been very good at singing, and her favorite activity was singing. A god of creation who specialized in performing and then brought out her unique skills could be imagined just how powerful it was. She was the brightest star tonight. She even captured tens of thousands of die-hard fans in one night, causing countless fans of other artists to defect to Tiany one after another, bringing the nightmares of being ruled over by her. Tiany successfully entered the Heavenly Book Pavilion. When she said that she wanted to enter the Heavenly Book Pavilion, all the male celebrities rushed to give their spots to her. One could imagine how great her charm was. She walked into the Heavenly Book Pavilion. She was still pure and innocent, as if she was a cute fairy. She swayed her fishtail and walked to the center. Tiany looked at the dazzling array of books on the bookshelves. Her sparkling lips opened slightly, and she whispered to herself in an extremely pleasant voice. Ever since I came to this world, I've had an inexplicable sense of familiarity. After entering the Heavenly Book Pavilion, this sense of familiarity has become even stronger. Perhaps this world is my real home. My origin is here, and the goddess probably wants to recover the origin and repair it. She seemed to have figured something out. An extremely beautiful smile appeared on her pure and innocent face. If everything goes well, will I be able to go home? I'm looking forward to it. The 6th district, the Dragon Valley, at the entrance of the Heavenly Book Pavilion. Mou rolled to the entrance and stopped outside in a daze. It didn't speak. Some of the headliners who were paying attention to it were very surprised. Right at this moment, the headliners suddenly realized what it was thinking. It wanted to go in. It was only natural that such a philosophical and profound teacher wanted to enter the Heavenly Book Pavilion. It was the best guest of the Heavenly Book Pavilion. As a result, they all rushed to give their great contribution opportunities to Mou. Mou, who was the least favored by Lin, successfully rolled into the Heavenly Book Pavilion under the protection of all the headliners. Everything went smoothly. None of the gods of creation were easy to deal with. Living beings of this level were legendary beings regardless of whether it was in the Taichu continent or the realm of stars. They were standing at a completely different level, so they naturally knew how to perform in order to win over the hearts of the audience. Tonight was the most glorious night for the holy land of Taichu's performing arts. Tonight was also the night with the most glorious battle results. All of the gods of creation relayed the good news to Tina through their connection. At this moment, Lin had also entered the Heavenly Book Pavilion. After hearing all the good news, he was even more impressed by Tina. Little Na, your underlings are so capable. It's all right, they're still very hardworking. Everything is going smoothly, regardless of whether it's winning the headliners or entering the Heavenly Book Pavilion. Tina stroked her chin and said in a low voice, I thought some of the mayors would stop them from entering the Heavenly Book Pavilion. I'm also very surprised. It looks like the mayors didn't express their stance because they wanted to remain neutral, right? They didn't dare to interfere after seeing a powerful being enter the venue, and Lin said with a smile. Right at this moment, a voice contacted Tina. The ball of light beside Tina lit up. Goddess. Emergency. I've found the target. Blackstone's voice was full of urgency. What target? The Heavenly Light Goddess? And Lin's heart skipped a beat. That's right. She's in the form of a dark-winged tribewoman. She's performing the solitary dance under the moon and has caused a stir in the Holy Feather Workshop. As he spoke, Blackstone's voice paused. His clear and cold voice became a few degrees quieter, and he said weakly, I think my ticket might not be able to compare to hers. What's the point of worrying about the ticket now? Think of a way to stop her from entering the Heavenly Book Pavilion. And Lin interjected, I can't. I feel like if I fight the heavenly light goddess within the barrier of light, I'll be attacked by an extremely terrifying restriction formation. Blackstone replied. How long until the voting results come out? Unlin asked. 10 minutes, Blackstone replied. Unlin looked at the book before him. Wait for me. I'll be able to make it in time. What a difficult task. They had finally found the heavenly light goddess. Unlin was nervous and excited, but at the same time, he sighed with emotion. Who would have thought that the heavenly light goddess would really become a trainee? Chapter 2234. Within District 1's Holy Feather Workshop, the audience erupted into raucous cheers. Moonlit Night, I love you. Celestial Maiden Moonlit Night, I'll be your eternal follower. Moonlit Night, Moonlit Night, Moonlit Night. All the audience members went crazy after watching the solo dance under the moonlight. They had never seen such a beautiful and moving dance before. It was so pure and holy, so refreshing, so tempting, and made people yearn for it. Not only the men, but even the women were in awe. Listening to the praises and love, the woman with a tranquil and cold temperament stood alone in the center of the stage. A trace of imperceptible annoyance flashed across her eyes, but her face still revealed an incomparably beautiful smile. She bowed slightly and left the stage. She walked backstage and looked at the only woman who could compete with her. Hey, sure, you look very unfamiliar. Where are you from? Yu's smile revealed a touch of amiability, as if she wanted to have a friendly conversation. You look unfamiliar as well. Where are you from? Blackstone said expressionlessly. His tone revealed a faint sense of aloofness. She had actually heard Goddess Tina mention this being before. The heavenly light goddess was the most terrifying enemy in the Taichu continent. She was very curious just how powerful this enemy was to be taken so seriously by Goddess Tina. As a god of creation, she was actually quite prideful. She had a sense of pride that all gods of creation had. Heaven and earth are nothing compared to me. To be more precise, she didn't think the heavenly light goddess had the right to be taken so seriously by Goddess Tina. Blackstone wanted to witness the true power of the heavenly light goddess. Of course, this was just a petty thought on her part. Moonlit Night smiled lightly and didn't answer Blackstone's question. Blackstone didn't pursue the matter either. Neither of them wanted to divulge any information about themselves, so they fell into a period of silence. At this moment, the surrounding celebrities had already gathered around them enthusiastically, including some of the top stars who weren't performing on the stage. The frosty expressions on Moonlit Night and Blackstone's faces instantly melted, and they transformed into gentle, easygoing women. Their good attitudes made all of the celebrities feel as if they were bathing in a spring breeze. Of course, this wasn't their true selves. If they could, they would definitely put on a cold and aloof expression. So why were they doing this? Of course, it was for the opportunity to enter the Heavenly Book Pavilion and make a huge contribution. They were waiting for these headliners to make a big contribution, so their attitude naturally couldn't be too bad. The results of the votes were announced. Blackstone was a little nervous. There were 60,000 votes in total. How many could she have? The ordinary celebrities were in a miserable state. Basically, they only got a few hundred votes. Even if they were the headliners, they would still get 1,000 to 2,000 votes. One could imagine how terrifying the number of votes the two beauties attracted was. Up to the third place, the star of the show also received around 2,500 votes. Blackstone and Moonlit Night both looked at the screen. The moment to decide the victor had arrived. The second contestant will be revealed next. The host's excited voice rang out. 3, 2, 1. On the stage, a dark-winged tribewoman with exquisite features began to appear. Congratulations, Blackstone. He won second place with 21,000 votes. The host's excited voice could be heard. Blackstone's face darkened when he saw this. Yi raised her eyebrows and said with joy in her voice, Congratulations. Hey, sure, you got second place. Heh. Blackstone grimaced, and he wanted to beat someone up. Let's welcome the trainee Blackstone onto the stage, the host announced excitedly. The audience was also cheering. However, Blackstone stood motionlessly on the spot, and no one knew what he was thinking. Blackstone, it's your turn. Don't just stand there. The celebrities around him were all urging him on with congratulatory smiles on their faces. The host's voice traveled backstage again. Let's welcome Blackstone onto the stage. The top 10 celebrities with the most votes had to go onto the stage. This was the rule. However, Blackstone acted as if he hadn't heard the host's words. Instead, he crossed his arms and looked at the scenery outside. What's going on? Blackstone, what's wrong? Why aren't you going out? The celebrities around him couldn't help but urge him on. What's the hurry? I'm feeling a little unwell. Give me a moment. Blackstone's expression suddenly changed, and he turned around with a smile. The celebrities were all dumbstruck. The woman in front of them was full of energy and vitality. She didn't look the least bit unwell. Even if she was trying to fool them, she should at least put on a convincing act. At this time, Moonlit Night noticed something. She frowned and said, Blackstone, are you stalling for time? Big sister, how can you say I'm stalling for time? I really don't feel well. Maybe I put too much effort into my performance. Let me rest for a few minutes. Blackstone looked as if he had been wronged. When Moonlit Night saw Blackstone like this, she gritted her teeth. She wanted to do something, but she didn't at this time. The host urged him again, but Blackstone was still trying to evade. This time, the rhythm was all messed up. The celebrities didn't know what Blackstone was trying to do. The host looked confused, too. The two top-tier beauties of the Darkwing tribe were the highlight of the night, and neither one of them could be missing. The audience was waiting for the Darkwing Jiao duo to take the stage, but Blackstone had openly disrupted their rhythm, leaving the host at a loss as to what to do. In the end, King Bai, who was sitting in the center of the audience, said, Blackstone, you can't go on stage because of your body condition. We can start the next segment now. In a special situation like this, King Bai's words were very useful. Humph, this King Bai seems to have a problem. Blackstone lifted his lips. You've successfully stalled for 5 minutes. Are you still not satisfied? Moonlit Night's eyes were cold as she stared at Blackstone. Blackstone was happy to see Moonlit Night angry. At this time, Moonlit Night's votes came out. She had 28,000 votes, almost 7,000 more than Blackstone. The difference in votes was not very big, but Blackstone was not happy. Although both of them had more votes than the other top celebrities, and their votes were 8 times more than the top celebrity, there was another condition to become the top celebrity, and that was to become a champion. Blackstone was not happy. She had failed her mission. The host was very excited. This is something that has never happened in a million years. Blackstone broke the record of Holy Feather Workshop. He became the first celebrity to spend 7 times more votes than the top celebrity. But he didn't become the top celebrity. These words stabbed Blackstone like a knife. Did he know how to speak? Did this D*Ned host know how to speak? Following that, the audience cheered and booed. Clearly, they thought this record was very interesting. Some of the audience thought it was a shame, but they weren't sad. After all, Blackstone was very powerful. Even if he didn't become the top celebrity tonight, he would become one in the future. There was no need to rush. Moonlit Night successfully became the top celebrity of Holy Feather Workshop, amidst the cheers and shouts of the audience. King Bai gave her a crown, and she started to walk toward the Sky Book Pavilion. Chapter 2235. Outside the Heavenly Book Library, Blackstone crossed his arms and leaned against the wall outside the door. The woman called you was already walking over with light steps. There was a faint smile on her lips. It doesn't matter if you were sent by Lin or not. You've already failed. Why don't you scram? Yi said mercilessly. She didn't even bother to keep up appearances. After all, she now had all the conditions she wanted. The mysterious prohibition hidden in the Heavenly Book Pavilion would no longer stop her from absorbing the Heavenly Book. Blackstone was still standing motionlessly at the entrance of the Heavenly Book Pavilion. You're the goddess of light. How could you say that? Did she not care about her demeanor as a goddess? Like a shrew cursing in the street. Blackstone sneered, his face full of disdain, his feet not moving. As he spoke, he looked at Bai King. When Bai King heard the words light goddess, his face did not change. That confirmed his suspicions. Sigh, I don't know what bewitched Bai King. The heavenly light goddess was going to destroy the heavenly Tao here. Yi was too lazy to argue with Blackstone. She knew in her heart that Blackstone just wanted to continue arguing to delay her time. She strode towards the heavenly book pavilion. Blackstone suddenly stood in front of her. Yi looked annoyed. She moved her feet, wanting to walk past the black stone. However, the black stone moved with her and continued to block her path. It even used a certain plump part to push against Yi. Sister Moonlit Night, why are you in such a hurry? Black stone changed her cold appearance. For the sake of the mission that the Lady Goddess had given her, she was willing to go all out. She sweetly smiled and said, Little sister has many questions that I would like to ask big sister. Yi ran out of patience and tried to push the black stone away, but the black stone did not budge. She was so angry that she wanted to utilize the true strength within her body. However, she'd only just mobilized it when she sensed an extremely terrifying restrictive energy locking onto her. Are you going to scram or not? Yi was furious. I don't know how to roll. Why don't you teach me? Blackstone's smile was very, very beautiful. If a man stood in front of her, he would have long been captivated by her soft voice and beautiful smile. At this time, Bai King could not stand it anymore. He stood up and coldly said, Blackstone, if you do not move away, I will use the excuse of disturbing the order and breaking the rules. I will use force to restrict you. Under normal circumstances, it was forbidden to use force within the protective light screen. If there were special circumstances, the mayor had the right to use force within the light screen. King Bai is such a bully. Blackstone still looked very pitiful, but he did not back down. He laughed and said, Stop being so stubborn. If you don't like what's happening, just touch me. Let's see if I will stab you or not. Bai King's veins jumped. He suddenly threw a coin at the black stone. King Bai is enforcing the law. Transfer. The copper coin suddenly shone with a strange light. In the next second, Blackstone and Bai King were teleported outside the absolute beginning Holy Land's light screen. When facing all of this, Blackstone could simply be described as being caught off guard. She did not react at all, and she was teleported outside. The copper coin contained rule power that even she was afraid of. Did you do this? Blackstone looked at the 8-winged holy angel in front of him. His eyes looked like they were about to spit fire. It is me, Bai King said. You have broken the rules of the first zone. I'm going to restrict your freedom for now. Just give up. Bai King waved his hand in the air. He pulled out a chain that had countless symbols on it out of thin air. He did not say much. He threw the chain at Blackstone. Blackstone could do whatever she wanted inside the light screen. After all, the absolute beginning Holy Land's territory was very small. The restrictions would protect and restrict creatures from fighting, so he could not destroy the city with one slap. However, once they were outside, they would not be restricted. Bai King, who had the power of the first zone's buff, had the power to create a world. Against a small character like Blackstone, he could defeat him with one hit. The chain pierced through the air faster than lightning, like a flash of light. Bai King thought he would be able to see the Blackstone get caught up in the chains in the next second. Bam! Blackstone held a silver-white spear in his hand and easily swatted away the chain. The chain, which was faster than lightning, was unexpectedly swept away by the spear. Bai King was stunned. What's going on? Even a Dao integration stage being could not dodge this god-sealing chain. She looked like an ordinary woman. At this moment, a terrifying power suddenly exploded. It was as vast as the sea, unparalleled in the world. The woman stood on the spear, looking majestic. Countless rays of pure, white Genesis energy seemed to be able to tear the entire world apart. Bai King's expression changed from confusion to shock. I have decided not to pretend anymore. The woman spread her wings, like a sky curtain that covered the stars. Her eyes were deep and sharp, and the terrifying aura she released made all the creatures in the holy land of Taichu hold their breath. I will tell you. Blackstone held the tip of the spear and pointed it at Bai King. In an instant, the spear intent seemed to penetrate Bai King's body. Bai King's expression changed drastically. You are the god of creation. Before he finished speaking, the spear tip was already in front of Bai King. Whoosh! The sharp white light pierced through the sky, piercing a dark hole in the sky, and then directly tore Bai King's protective true energy and penetrated his body. Bai King, the most powerful warrior in the Holy Land of Taichu, was seriously injured by black stone. All the creatures in the Holy Land of Taichu exclaimed, "The world is going to change. It's really going to change." First it was the heavenly light goddess, then Lu Debao, and now black stone. What's going on with the Holy Land of Taichu? Why are there so many mysterious, powerful beings suddenly appearing? What is their purpose? Some people were sighing, and some people were already very worried. Yi looked at the sky. When she saw Blackstone's true strength, she was not very surprised. Instead, she smiled faintly and walked straight toward the Heavenly Book Pavilion. However, before she stepped into the gate of the Heavenly Book Pavilion, the relaxed smile on her face disappeared, and for the first time, she looked serious and displeased. The space rippled. A man in a white robe suddenly appeared in the middle of the gate of the Heavenly Book Pavilion. Who is it? How could it be? He suddenly appeared. The two holy angels guarding the gate were both startled. They were super mighty beings of a Tao integration stage, but they didn't even sense this person approaching or appearing. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. Heavenly Light Goddess, long time no see. What happened? Why are you so happy? The person who came was Enlin. He looked at the cold woman in front of him and said with a smile. Yi spoke in a cold voice. Enlin, so what if you're here? The performance is already over, and I'm the star of the show. The Heavenly Book Pavilion has acknowledged me, so there's no point in you coming here. Besides, you can't use force here because of the restriction. How are you going to stop me? Accept your fate. With that, Yi continued forward. At this moment, a small fairy suddenly appeared beside Yi. Her hands were glowing with a strange golden light, and she said in a sweet voice, "Is that so?" Chapter 2236. Yi was astonished. When did she appear beside me? That was the only question in Yuye's mind. However, in the next instant, the golden light transformed into countless ropes that tightly bound Yuye's slender and perfect body. Countless divine seals emanated from the ropes, unleashing an extremely terrifying sealing power. Bang! Yuye's body became unstable, and she fell to the ground with her body tied up. How is this possible? Who are you? How can you attack me here? The woman looked up at the little fairy in the sky in shock. She still remembered that after she killed the two gatekeepers of the second zone, the restriction of the Heavenly Book Pavilion also killed her in an instant. It was very straightforward and efficient. But now, this little fairy had attacked. Why didn't the Heavenly Book Pavilion do anything to her? Yi struggled with all her might, but she was completely unable to break free from Tina's ropes. Not only that, but Tina's ropes tightened even more, and Yuye's petite figure was beginning to deform. A blush appeared on the woman's face, not from shyness, but from the congested blood in her body, which was about to turn purple. Are you forcing me to unleash the power within my body? A thought suddenly occurred to Yi, and her expression darkened. If she unleashed the power within her body, then the restriction of the Heavenly Book Pavilion would be able to severely injure her, even without the little fairy's help. You can't kill me here, which means that you can only use your power within a limited range, right? Yi spoke in a cold voice. So what? Tina's fingers slowly clenched, and the binding power of the ropes became a strangling power, squeezing her more and more intensely. When she entered the Heavenly Book Pavilion with Enlin, she had already sensed that the restriction here was not hostile toward her. Not only that, but the restriction was also strangely friendly toward her. This was evident from the fact that she was able to enter the Heavenly Book Pavilion with Enlin, even though she was not qualified to do so. However, she couldn't use too much of her power, as the restriction's primary purpose was to protect the Heavenly Book, the Holy Land of Taichu, and the building before her. If she used too much power, the restriction would also stop her. Yi wailed in anguish. She looked up at the Heavenly Book Pavilion with an expression of indignation. It was obvious that he was only one step away from obtaining the Heavenly Book. Right at this moment, two fierce roars sounded. You have obtained the right to enforce the law. Stop! The two holy angels suddenly let loose an almighty roar before charging toward Tina at the same time. One of them condensed a sword of holy light in one hand, while the other began to chant a holy voice. Countless streaks of white holy light transformed into flying birds that surrounded Tina, and the holy light sword slashed down ferociously toward the little fairy with boundless might. Little Na and Lin immediately became nervous. However, Tina gave Lin a reassuring look. Her finger was still pointing at the moonlit night. Her finger blossomed with an indescribable divine light, forming a spherical tornado. With her petite body as the center, it exploded with a loud rumble. Break! Chi chi chi! Divine light exploded and tore the holy bird apart. The holy angel wielding the holy light greatsword was blasted away by the strange force. And Lin could sense that the energy level of this spell was very high, but the holy angel wasn't injured at all. He immediately understood what Tina was thinking. By not harming the gatekeeper, she could effectively avoid the backlash of the restriction. After blasting away the two holy angels, a fierce light flashed through Tina's eyes, and she gripped the rope tightly toward the heavenly light goddess. A blinding light suddenly erupted from the rope. The heavenly light goddess screamed. The rope exploded on the spot, engulfing the heavenly light goddess body. However, Lin didn't even have a chance to celebrate before a streak of golden light shot forth like a sharp arrow, tearing through all of the energy before flying toward the heavenly tome library. Crap! Lin was given a fright, and he immediately unsheathed his evil-slaying sword and slashed toward the streak of golden light. However, right before the streak of golden light was struck, it suddenly split into two and perfectly evaded the sword strike before rushing into the heavenly book pavilion. In the next instant, both Lin and the streak of golden light were struck by an unimaginable backlash that struck directly at their life essence. PFFF. Lin threw up a mouthful of blood. The golden light also trembled violently. However, in the next instant, it transformed into the severely wounded heavenly light goddess and appeared within the heavenly book pavilion. The heavenly light goddess had paid the price of being severely wounded by the concealment spell formation to successfully enter the heavenly book pavilion. She wasn't crushed into specks of light like last time. Perhaps it was because she didn't attack the guardian, or perhaps it was because she had been acknowledged by the heavenly book pavilion. As such, the backlash from the restriction this time wasn't as severe. No one can stop me. I must obtain the incomplete heavenly Tao. The heavenly light goddess spread open her arms, and a peerless light erupted from her body, instantly engulfing the entire heavenly book pavilion. Jine and Lin, give me some of your power of darkness. The restriction of the heavenly book pavilion won't be able to stop me. Tina suddenly said, Little Na, do you want to go in? And Lin's expression shifted slightly at the thought of what Tina might do. That's right. There's no time. Trust me. Tina looked at the boundless light within the heavenly book pavilion with a grave expression. And Lin wiped the blood from the corners of his lips before placing a finger on Tina's forehead with a serious expression. Little Na, don't force yourself. You haven't fully recovered yet. If we can't defeat them, then we'll leave. There are still many ways for us to win. Tina nodded with a smile. Darkness began to erupt from Lin's fingertip. This darkness quickly flowed into her body through her forehead. Tina let loose a long and comfortable moan. Is this giant and Lin's power? Even though it looks quite scary, it's surprisingly quite tranquil. Tranquil? And Lin faltered slightly upon hearing this. This was the first time he had heard someone describe his power in such a manner. All right, Jine and Lin, I'm going in now. After receiving Lin's power of darkness, Tina flapped her golden cicada wings and flew into the heavenly book pavilion like a streak of light. And Lin's eyes glowed with a white light as he surveyed the situation within the heavenly book pavilion. Thankfully, a spell technique like this wouldn't trigger the restrictions within the heavenly book pavilion. He didn't know who had set up the restrictions within the heavenly book pavilion, but they were extremely terrifying. Even a top-tier being like Lin wouldn't know how to defend against the attacks of these restrictions. It was like something from another dimension. You could sense it attacking you, and you could sense the profound energy fluctuations emanating from it, but you didn't know how to defend yourself. This kind of power had already exceeded the scope of Enlin's knowledge. From what Enlin had seen and heard, the only beings who possessed this kind of power were most likely Pangu and the heavenly true immortal. He discarded all distracting thoughts. Enlin turned his gaze toward the heavenly book pavilion. Chapter 22:37. In the sky of the holy land of Taichu, two dazzling figures collided with each other. Waves of terrifying collisions spread out, destroying everything in the surroundings. The battle between Bai King and Blackstone could only be described as dazzling. The silver spear was like a silver dragon crossing the sky. Every time it roared, Bai King would be forced to retreat. A few bloody wounds would appear on his body. Bai King's cloud-moving moon palm was also extremely exquisite. Aside from the first time he was attacked by the spear. The rest of his attacks were used to defend. In the eyes of outsiders, they kept colliding in the sky. It looked like they were evenly matched, but in fact, Bai King kept defending and Blackstone kept attacking. Blackstone's power was much stronger than Bai King imagined. If Blackstone didn't have to use some of his power to resist the backlash of this world, Bai King, who was said to have the power of the god of creation, would have been defeated a long time ago. Ha ha! Again! I haven't had such a good fight in a long time. Blackstone claimed that after the divine mirror world was destroyed, he had been struggling at death's door. He was afraid that a sneeze would shatter his final resting place. How could he be as happy as he was now? Bai King felt like he had eaten *T when he heard that. Blackstone was happy, but he didn't feel good. Why are you stopping me? Why are you stopping Moonlit Night? This is my choice. Bai King was forced to retreat by the surging galaxy of the spear. His voice was full of resentment and hatred. Your choice? Have you asked all the creatures in the first area? The light has only given you destruction. Blackstone turned into a valiant war goddess. His spear danced and collided with Bai King's cloud-moving moon palm. Waves of terrifying destructive energy exploded. I don't need to ask. They don't understand. But this is the only way out. The light will guide us wandering souls to the real way back. Bai King suddenly pushed his palms toward Blackstone. A pure white holy light palm hung for 1,000 miles, majestic and magnificent. You crazy man! Blackstone shouted angrily. His spear changed from stabbing to hacking, cutting the invincible holy light palm in half. A silver light appeared on the tip of the spear. A silver light turned into billions of stars that followed the tip of the spear. It was like a silver dragon heading for Bai King. Origin Energy God Technique, Azure Dragon Galaxy. A dragon's roar shook thousands of miles. The silver dragon blocked all of Bai King's escape routes. He fell from the sky. Bai King struck the silver dragon with his hands. He was not able to block it for even a second before the silver dragon pushed him down to the ground. He created a giant dragon-shaped crater in the ground. Blackstone held a silver spear in her hand. Her black hair fluttered in the wind, and she was peerlessly beautiful. She stood proudly in the starry sky like an invincible goddess of war as she looked down at the enemies below. Bai King's hands were bloody. He was coughing up blood in the hole. To be able to block my origin power divine skill, I acknowledge your strength, Blackstone said calmly. Bai King's heart felt bitter. Back in the Sacred Feather Workshop, he was still a top-notch figure who could casually judge that woman. Who would have thought that in such a short period of time, he would become a loser who was looked down upon? That cold, weak woman who wanted to use her performance to gain the approval of the audience had suddenly become a god spirit who controlled the original power of the universe. Blackstone, I admit you are strong, but you are useless against me. Light Sky God has already entered the Sky Book Pavilion. I have won this fight. Bai King smiled as if he had won. Even if you kill me, you cannot change the outcome. Sky Book Pavilion? It is fine. Our goddess will take care of everything. Blackstone laughed. Goddess? Bai King was shocked. You guys are not the people Lu DeBeo brought here? Does that mean? Bai King took a deep breath. Ha! You finally guessed it, Blackstone said with a cocky tone. Lu DeBeo is a woman. She is a woman disguised as a man. Bai King now understood. Blackstone was speechless. What? Am I wrong? Bai King was shocked. In the next moment, he saw the silver spear mercilessly strike again. It cut his body in half. There was no hesitation. Write my *S. Go die. Blackstone coldly spoke to the man who had been crushed until his body turned into light particles. Huh? No. Why is it not dead yet? Blackstone suddenly looked in another direction. In the area of the first zone, a weird power suddenly rose. It was like yin and yang. It was like reincarnation. It was like some kind of reverse flow. Bai King's body was made of countless light particles. It formed a complete body. How is it? Are you surprised to see that I am not dead? Bai King saw Blackstone's face look surprised. He was very satisfied. He smiled and said, I am the mayor who knows the Sky Book Pavilion the best. I am the first mayor to reach an agreement with the Sky Book Pavilion. As long as the Sky Book is here, I am immortal. Do not waste your energy. Blackstone was excited. The silver spear unleashed a light that shocked the sky. Is that so? I'd like to see if you're really immortal. Bai King heard him and shook his head. The Sky Book Pavilion approves of me. The restrictions support me. The power of the Sky Book Pavilion's restrictions is unsolvable. You do not understand it. It is a power that is beyond your imagination. A voice suddenly sounded in Bai King's ears. Really? It is beyond my imagination. Who is it? Bai King was shocked. He turned around and saw a true demon man. He was smiling at him. You are. Bai King was still in shock. A fist that was as big as a sandbag was coming down. At this moment, the blood air was going through the entire galaxy. Pang! Bai King's body was hammered into a giant, bloody hole. He spat out blood and fell. At this time, he still wanted to gather up holy light to fight back. At this time, he suddenly heard a child's voice in his ears. Immortal body? Does that mean I can be a sandbag that will never break? That is great. A blue child with 3 heads appeared below Bai King. Their heads were laughing. They opened their mouths at Bai King. What is this thing? Bai King looked shocked. Gulp. The children opened and closed their mouths at the same time. Bai King's expression was still on his face. Suddenly, his eyes became lifeless. His god soul was suddenly eaten up. He became a body without a soul. Padong! The body fell to the ground and did not move. The hidden restrictions in the first area were shaking again. Bai King's body was in the sky. This time, he chose to recover far away from the fight. He did not want to be surrounded by many. He had just recovered his body when he saw a very pure and clean girl staring at him in a daze. Her light pink fishtail was swaying, and there was a blue mole at the corner of her eye. She looked lovely and lovely. Before he could say anything, his body strangely melted. At the same time, an ugly stone fell from the sky. It pressed Bai King to the ground and killed him. Chapter 22:38. Bai King had only been revived for a few seconds before he was killed again. At this time, the appearance of 5 beings shocked all the creatures in the holy land of Taichu. Millions of creatures looked at the battle in the distance and did not know what to say. Why were there so many powerful creatures all of a sudden? Aren't those the top 3 creatures tonight? Oh my god! The flowing gold trainee went to beat up Bai King as soon as he got the top card. Roundface is really a man of few words. That's impossible. Why is our goddess Tiani here? Aren't you a singer? Why are you fighting against the chiefs of the Holy Land? Some creatures were shocked, and some were sad. But there was no doubt that it was going to be a sleepless night. Almost all the creatures were looking at the figures outside the light screen. At this time, Bai King was revived again. Who are you? Who is the goddess you were talking about? Bai King was running like crazy, and he asked while running. You don't need to know who our goddess is. You only need to know that if you are on the side of the light goddess, you are our enemy. Tiani waved her tail in the air. There was nothing in the air, but the ripples of the sea appeared. At this moment, Bai King felt like he was not flying in the air, but swimming in the sea. The seawater contained the ultimate power, which prevented him from moving. At this time, a true demon man laughed and appeared directly above Bai King. His fist contained the purest power and smashed down. Bai King wanted to block, but he found that the seawater greatly slowed him down. It's over, he suddenly had a thought. Then his head was smashed. The chiefs of the other districts swallowed and panicked when they saw this. Bai King's legs were killed again. They did not have Bai King's unlimited resurrection power. If they were to face these big shots, they would be killed instantly. They could not even escape. Why is our new top card fighting King Bai? Turtle King of the second zone looked at Tian E with shock. He was so shocked that he looked at Tian E. Our district too. The martial emperor of the fourth district murmured. The Dragon King said, +1. The Spirit Fish King said, +1. This is definitely a premeditated battle. The Nephilim King said solemnly. They said Bai King chose Light Sky God. Is that true? If that was the case, then these people were enemies of the Heavenly Light Goddess, right? Are they teammates with Lu Debeo? And who was the goddess they're talking about? The Red Emperor was at a loss. Beings like them would not lie about something like that. Bai King agreed, so they're on the same side as us. The Demon King was silent for a while before he said, I think I understand why Lu Debeo wants us to wait for him and hold the performance night. A certain possibility occurred to the Dragon Emperor, and his entire body shuddered. Seal off all of the Heavenly Light Goddess's paths of retreat? How can this Lu Debeo mobilize such a terrifying force? All the district chiefs were shocked, but they also felt very fortunate. In some ways, they were their teammates. Even some district chiefs with unclear attitudes were afraid that Lu Debeo was also approaching the Heavenly Book Pavilion with impure intentions. No one wanted the Holy Land of Taichu to be destroyed. Except for Bai King. Yes, they had heard Blackstone accused Bai King of his crimes during the battle, and Bai King did not deny it. This was very terrifying. Damn Bai King. Why did he choose to side with Light? Fortunately, the five God of Creation subordinates under Tina appeared and perfectly suppressed Bai King. However, that Light Goddess still gave them a deep worry. They all guessed one possibility. That was the Light Goddess was very likely in the first district. She might even be in the Heavenly Book Pavilion, silently carrying out her plan. At this moment, inside Holy Feather's Heavenly Book Pavilion, light and darkness were colliding violently. Both of them wanted to obtain the Heavenly Book as soon as possible, so they used their powers to nibble away at each other's power while absorbing the knowledge in the book. This book had just been baptized by light, and darkness came to devour it again. After darkness devoured the book, light impatiently came to baptize it again. Of course, more often than not, darkness and light collided with each other. No one was allowed to absorb the knowledge in the book. In the competition between the two powers, light still prevailed. It couldn't be helped. The Heavenly Light Goddess power was hers, while Tina's power was borrowed. However, Tina also had an advantage. She had the upper hand in terms of martial prowess. The restriction of the Heavenly Book Pavilion was much less restrictive on her than on the Heavenly Light Goddess, so she could pursue the Heavenly Light Goddess relentlessly. However, the Heavenly Light Goddess couldn't use too much of her power. Otherwise, she would still be attacked by the restriction even if she was recognized by the Heavenly Book Pavilion. Divine Technique, Illusionary Mirror Blade. Tina let out a delicate cry as she wielded a pair of illusionary sword blades. She charged toward the woman in the black dress and unleashed a series of ethereal slashes. The Heavenly Light Goddess could only feel that every time Tina slashed out with her sword would completely disappear. At the same time, similar sword attacks would appear from different directions. The Heavenly Light Goddess clearly had the eyes of eternal truth, which could see through illusions, but she was still confused by Tina's attacks. Each and every one of the fairy sword strikes was like an illusory bubble. They were unfathomable, but when the sword slashed past, it was able to leave deep gashes on the Heavenly Light Goddess' snow-white skin. In less than a minute, the Heavenly Light Goddess's body was riddled with wounds of varying degrees, and she appeared to be in an extremely sorry state. And Lin's mouth gaped open in shock. Was this still the harmless little elf in his mind? She was so powerful that she defied the natural order. Who would have thought that the final boss in his heart would be bullied to such an extent by Tina? This was a very peculiar sight, and he felt an indescribable sense of satisfaction and gratification in his heart. The heavenly light goddess had been bullied to the point where she couldn't take it anymore. She made a hand seal, and light converged in her palms. She then abruptly pushed her palms toward the fairy. Infinite light, realm breaker, guard the formation, number 1. Tina interlaced her hands in front of her, and a complex and mysterious spirit formation that even Lin couldn't understand appeared before her. The light transformed into an extremely piercing light that pierced through the spirit formation, upon which an explosion of energy that was powerful enough to blind bystanders erupted. The piercing power of the light was extremely powerful, but Tina's spirit formation was also extremely powerful, and the light was unable to pierce through the spirit formation's defenses in a short time. Boom! Tina was pushed into a bookshelf by the terrifying piercing light. The restriction formation trembled violently as it tried to protect the integrity of the books. PFFF. The heavenly light goddess suddenly threw up a mouthful of blood, and she stumbled back in retreat as if she had been struck by some kind of force. The heavenly book pavilion's restriction formation had been activated. Blood also trickled down the corners of Tina's lips. She had also unleashed an extremely powerful attack, but her backlash was still not as severe as the heavenly light goddesses. Now it was the time for her to retaliate. Darkness began to spread and quickly engulfed the books that were revealed after the light receded. Chapter 22:39. The heavenly light goddess endured her injuries and fought desperately against the darkness for the right to absorb more books and knowledge. As the paramount heavenly light goddess, she had never felt so humiliated before. She was being bullied to this extent by a mere fairy. She was the star of the show, and she had made a significant contribution. Why was the restrictions attack still directed at her? Why was this detestable little fairy able to gain the favor of the restriction formation? The heavenly light goddess was extremely aggrieved. However, all she got in return was the rise of darkness and the devilish smile on Tina's face as she continued to pursue the heavenly light goddess. The battle in the heavenly book pavilion had reached its climax. The darkness had already absorbed 50 million books, which was very close to the heavenly light goddess's speed of absorbing 56 million books. Tina was still suppressing the heavenly light goddess in an attempt to distract the heavenly light goddess. The heavenly light goddess decided not to take the initiative to attack. Instead, she waved her blood moon scythe to block Tina's attacks. So be it. Once she obtained the heavenly book pavilion, she would show Tina what true despair was. Bam, bam, bam. The sounds of weapons clashing rang out incessantly within the heavenly book pavilion. Beams of dazzling energy collided and exploded, crisscrossing between light and darkness, looking like dazzling flowers that were constantly flashing. The two gatekeepers looked at the battle in the heavenly book pavilion and discovered that they couldn't even capture the movements of the combatants. The gap between their cultivation levels was too vast. They couldn't help but look toward the entrance, where a man was standing. The man didn't violate the rules, so they didn't dare to use violence against him. Fortunately, he didn't violate the rules. Even the fairy inside was very respectful toward him. Who knew how powerful he was? They would probably be annihilated with just a wave of his hand. The gatekeepers suddenly felt sorry for themselves. They were only at the Dao integration stage. Why were they in such a miserable state? They were tasked with the heavy responsibility of guarding the gate, but their lives had become the background. Not only did the two women not care about them, but even the man didn't look at them. Sigh, how depressing. The two holy angel gatekeepers looked at each other before continuing to watch the battle in the heavenly book pavilion anxiously. The battle between the two women had finally reached its final stage. The heavenly light goddess had already absorbed 90 million books, while Tina had also absorbed 89 million. I'll kill you in one go. Tina's eyes narrowed, and the darkness within her body suddenly erupted. Not only that, but countless divine runes also appeared on the surface of her body. An aura that belonged to the complete heavenly Tao began to erupt, and it suppressed the light in the room. Countless layers of mirrors appeared in the void. Not only did they reflect light, but they also devoured it. They actually represented the supreme heavens. Layers upon layers of heavenly Tao crushed the heavenly light goddess to the point of suffocation. The heavenly light goddess was given a fright, and a furious expression appeared on her face. How dare you release your heavenly Tao here? Do you want to die? Releasing the heavenly Tao outside was no different from putting his life out in the open. If the heavenly light goddess destroyed Tina's power of the heavenly Tao, then Tina would die on the spot. There was no other possibility. Tina didn't say anything. Instead, she increased her strength. It hadn't been easy for her to find Lin, so she absolutely couldn't let the tragedy repeat itself. For this, she was willing to use any means at all costs. Tina began to absorb the information in the book at an even faster rate. However, there was no way the heavenly light goddess was going to resign herself to her fate. Good, very good. If you're willing to put your life on the line, then I'll fulfill your wish. The heavenly light goddess's eyes suddenly erupted with a light that was even more dazzling than the sun. This is what I see. This is light. The power of light exploded forth. It surged violently toward the darkness before its eyes. The two holy angel gatekeepers covered their eyes and rolled around on the ground. Their eyes had already been purified by the light. Regardless of whether they opened or closed their eyes, all they could see was light that threatened to drown their existence. Little Na and Lin stood outside the door and looked into the heavenly book pavilion. His eyes were as black as ink, and no matter how much light there was, it would be completely engulfed by his darkness. He wasn't afraid of the light, but he was afraid of the restriction. When he saw Tina's desperate attack, his legs, which had been frozen in place for a long time, finally began to move. Attacks from the secret restriction began to appear. One was aimed at Tina, and the skin on her petite body began to crack open. The other was aimed at the heavenly light goddess. This was even more insane as the heavenly light goddess body began to distort. However, the heavenly light goddess didn't care. She had already fought with all her might, and she was determined to persevere even at the cost of injuring herself. Not only did the blinding light not weaken, but it instead became more and more powerful. The other was aimed at Lin, and Lin had barged into the heavenly book pavilion without permission. And Lin couldn't see or touch this energy, and it began to destroy his body. With every step he took, he would have to endure unimaginable wounds. Tina discovered that the heavenly light goddess was reading far faster than her, and she hurriedly increased her reading speed. She couldn't care less about the heavenly light goddess anymore. However, just as she was about to finish reading the last book with all her might, a woman in a black dress suddenly charged toward her. Her skin had cracked open inch by inch, and her entire face was covered in blood. Her expression was one of insanity and ruthlessness. Die! The heavenly light goddess Crimson Moon Scythe descended at the speed of light. There was only one thought in Tina's mind. Insane. This heavenly light goddess has gone insane. Is she trying to take me down with her? She was too fast, and Tina was too engrossed in reading to react in time. But in the blink of an eye, a hand suddenly tore through the light and blocked the descending Crimson Moon Scythe with its bare hands. The scythe, which was imbued with an extremely powerful killing intent, was firmly grasped in its hand. Rip! The scythe tore through the hand, and blood flowed down the wrist. At the same time, the heavenly light goddess power was also quickly engulfed by the darkness around her. It's you. You dare to attack me here? The heavenly light goddess stared at the man who had suddenly appeared before her in astonishment. Giant and Lin, don't. Tina immediately knew what Lin was going through at the sight of that familiar and reliable figure, and she immediately yelled at the top of her lungs. Don't worry about me. Focus on absorbing the information in the book, and Lin said in an extremely gentle voice. When he turned toward the heavenly light goddess, his expression became extremely cold again. You want to fight with your life on the line? I'll accompany you. But don't disturb little Na from reading. The heavenly light goddess expression faltered upon hearing this. At this moment, an extremely terrifying restriction backlash suddenly engulfed her entire body, and her extremely powerful light suddenly began to wane. Ah! The heavenly light goddess gritted her teeth and wailed in agony as she endured unimaginable pain. A mist of blood also erupted from Enlin's body. Giant Enlin. Tears welled up in Tina's eyes upon seeing this, and she tried even harder to absorb the information in the book. She definitely couldn't betray Enlin's trust. She had to obtain the heavenly book. Chapter 2240. I'm telling you, no matter how much you bully me, it's useless. You can't kill me. An 8-winged holy angel had 7 of its wings cut off by a black-feathered woman. It fell from the sky and shouted angrily. At this time, flowing gold creation god's fist hit the holy angel's chest. Pang! The shockwave spread for thousands of miles. There was also a gigantic demonic head that pierced through the back of the holy angel's chest. The holy angel's body was smashed by the fist and corroded by the demonic air. It died before it could even speak. Haha, this punching bag is not bad. I can keep testing my skills. Flowing Gold was having a lot of fun fighting. Calm down. Don't forget why we're here. We're here to help the goddess. Tiani spoke softly. We understand, but we cannot help the goddess, Blackstone said with a sigh. We can only bully by King here. Blackstone sighed. The 3-headed creature chuckled and said, You're right. Haha. Bai King needs the power of the Sky Book Pavilion to revive. If we keep killing Bai King, we'll just use up the power of the restriction. Doesn't that mean we'll be helping the goddess? Right. The 3 heads talked back and forth. At this time, the first zone shook again. A wave of incomparably powerful energy rose into the air. Holy light gathered. Bai King was going to revive. Haha, I told you not to waste your energy. It's not too late for you to run now. If the light succeeds, none of you will be able to escape. Before his body gathered, his voice came. Bai King kept talking. That was his last bit of stubbornness. His head had finished gathering. Look, I'm alive again. Bai King couldn't help but mock him. However, at this moment, he saw a few of the big shots of creation, and all of them were looking at him with sympathetic expressions. Bai King was shocked. He looked at his body. He was shocked to find that only his head was floating in the air. Where's my body? Where's my body? Bai King was confused. His head was flying around in the sky. He was panicking. Maybe the restriction thinks reviving you is pointless, Blackstone said coldly. It's better to revive your head. A critical hit. Those words were even more powerful than the previous attacks. They pierced Bai King's heart, even though he no longer had a heart. No. Bai King thought that reason was ridiculous. Flowing Gold happily added, After all, the energy of the barrier is very precious. Isn't it a waste to use it on you? Rumble. His words made Bai King's skin crispy. Bai King wanted to deny that ridiculous statement, but he did not know how to deny it. Hey, can you still fight? The flowing gold space flashed in front of Bai King. He squatted down and asked, Don't tell me you don't even have the right to be our punching bag? Bai King's head shook. Bai King said, F***CK me percent O intersection on her. He spat out a fragrant breath. Bang! Flowing Gold slapped Bai King away again. Looks like the battle is coming to an end. Tiani's gaze pierced through the light barrier, passing through the sacred feather square, looking at the mysterious heavenly book pavilion, looking at the light and darkness that flashed through the door. Yes, the barrier didn't buff Bai King. It looks like it's concentrating its power on the people inside the heavenly book pavilion. Blackstone looked worried. Will the goddess be okay? There is nothing in this world that the goddess is afraid of. Don't forget how powerful the goddess is. Flowing Gold was very confident about this. But she is not like before. She is very weak, Tiani said softly. All of the gods of creation fell silent upon hearing this. You are all dead. The last. Dong! Bai King had just formed his head. He was smashed by Moyu's round body and died on the spot. The god creation spirits didn't even bother to look at Bai King. Instead, they looked at the sacred feather square. They couldn't help but feel nervous. At this moment, in the heavenly book pavilion of the Holy Feather Square, the heavenly god of light, who had failed to ambush Tina, put all his power into the light around him. He exploded with power that was beyond his limits. Enlin quickly ran over and punched the heavenly light goddess in the face. The heavenly light goddess didn't dodge. Instead, she allowed Lin's fist to twist and flatten her beautiful face, and her body even flew back. She ignored Lin and focused on reading. Boom! The barrier only targeted Lin this time, and a hole was blasted into Lin's chest. No one can stop me, even if I have to burn my life essence. A determined expression appeared on the heavenly light goddess's face as a series of bloody wounds appeared on her skin. Her aura became more and more powerful, and the speed at which she absorbed information from the books increased drastically. So what if Lin and Tina were working together to target her? So what if 5 god creation spirits surrounded her? Even if she had to fight alone, she definitely wouldn't lose. It's finally done. Tina absorbed all the information from the books. She was just about to gather all the information and find some clues when she suddenly discovered that the heavenly light goddess's eyes were filled with pure light. Not good. The heavenly light goddess also finished reading at the same time. Countless streams of information flashed through Tina's eyes. Heavenly divination technique, activate. This was her most proficient divination technique as a god of creation. The heavenly light goddess's eyes glowed with billions of light particles, and she began to calculate to the extreme. Light divination technique. This was also a type of divination technique, and she represented the heavens of the Tai Chu continent. And Lin had already crawled up from the ground and was charging toward the heavenly light goddess again. Meanwhile, the heavenly light goddess's body had already flashed to a certain location, and she was carving a spell formation with one hand. Tina was also carving a spell formation while moving toward the heavenly light goddess. All of this happened in an extremely short period of time. Even for the high and mighty gods of creation, this was only a split second. And then, the heavenly book appeared. And Lin didn't know who was the first to carve a spell formation and summon the heavenly book. This was because Tina pounced onto the heavenly light goddess's face and activated the spell formation on her fingertip at almost the same time. A divine light surged, and the heavenly book descended. A colorful divine seal appeared on Tina's forehead, and her aura instantly soared to an incredible level. Her hand shot forth like lightning as she grabbed the heavenly book first. She had unleashed her blood ignition buff technique at the most crucial moment. Giant Lin. Tina charged toward Lin with the heavenly book in her hand. She was just about to toss the heavenly book into the divine mirror world when the heavenly light goddess suddenly appeared beside Tina. Tina thought that the heavenly light goddess was going to snatch the heavenly book, but to her surprise, the heavenly light goddess's mouth suddenly opened even wider than a hippopotamus. Then, she bit down and swallowed the heavenly book together. Light divine technique, all things revert. A voice sounded. Tina was immediately spat out. However, the heavenly book had already disappeared. Only the heavenly light goddess's blood-stained face revealed a smile. The heavenly book is mine now. Chapter 22:41. The heavenly light goddess had fused with the heavenly book. Tina and Lin both stared at the woman before them in disbelief. They failed, the two of them failed. Tina was filled with remorse and self-blame. And Lin, on the other hand, was trying to come up with a solution. The two of them charged toward the heavenly light goddess at the same time. At this moment, Yuye's body transformed into a beam of light and shot out of the heavenly book pavilion at an incredible speed. Then, she shot up into the sky and penetrated the protective light barrier of the holy land of Taichu before transforming back into her human form. The heavenly light goddess was already covered in wounds and blood, but she was still smiling. She had a triumphant smile on her face after her plan succeeded. I finally won. She looked at the two figures that came out of the heavenly book pavilion, and her smile remained unchanged. A peerless aura appeared on her face. At this moment, she suddenly discovered that there was a sharp blade behind her that seemed to be able to pierce through everything. A dazzling and unstoppable spear projection shot toward her like a shooting star. Divine spear technique, origin kill. Blackstone was the first to move, and she unleashed her full power right from the start. The spear was like a shooting star, and the god of creation's essential power was infused into the tip of the spear. Everything in its path was annihilated into nothingness. Do you think I'm still the same me in the holy land of Taichu? The heavenly light goddess glanced behind her, and her position suddenly changed. She appeared directly in front of Blackstone's divine spear technique. It looked like she was about to charge into the spear. However, in the next instant, Blackstone was shocked to discover that the heavenly light goddess' slender hand was directly blocking the tip of the spear. Boom! The essential power exploded at this moment. It clashed with the light in the night sky. After the shooting star was stopped, the explosive power was extremely terrifying. The destructive energy wave ravaged heaven and earth within a radius of thousands of kilometers. Blackstone felt her hand tremble violently. If it weren't for the fact that her divine body was extremely powerful, the backlash from the silver spear alone would have destroyed her body. The heavenly light goddess stood motionlessly high up in the sky. Her hand was still extended forward, and she gripped the mighty spear firmly in her palm. It was as if she could control everything in this world with her palm. A sizzling sound came from the front. This was the sound of the silvery white spear's energy exploding as it tried to stab forward, only to be blocked by the heavenly light goddess's palm. At this moment, Blackstone felt as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. The fair palm in front of him, under the origin kill, actually did not have the slightest injury. "Do you see the difference between us now?" the heavenly light goddess asked calmly. She exerted force in her palm, and the pure white light spread to the spear in a spiral, twisting and tearing the spear that was made of the peak of the divine artifact into pieces. At the same time, as the light exploded, the light and heat transformed into an extremely terrifying superluminal impact through a special method, crashing into Blackstone's body. Everything happened far, far too quickly. It was so fast that even a god of creation was unable to withstand it, and they were sent flying with blood gushing from their mouths. One strike. Just one strike. Just like that, Blackstone was heavily injured. This was the first time that Blackstone had faced such a fearsome enemy. The intensity and purity of his power were far beyond that of a normal god of creation. Was this the enemy that the goddess had to face? It was indeed terrifying. A hint of surprise appeared on the heavenly light goddess' face when she saw that Blackstone had survived her attack. It seemed as if these unfamiliar gods of creation were even more powerful than the gods of creation of the boundless realm of stars. Haha, we won. We finally won. Do you see that? This is the power of the heavenly light goddess. How can you weaklings be a match for the heavenly light goddess? Bai King, who had reformed his head, laughed happily. This is the final victory. This is the choice of the heavenly Tao. Heavenly light goddess, please save us. We don't want to live like this anymore. As he spoke, tears began to well up on Bai King's slightly crazed face. Light Sky God looked at Bai King. Her eyes were full of pity. She said, "As you wish." Right at this moment, Tina, En, and Lin had also rushed out of the Holy Land's protective barrier. "Little Na, you have to be careful of her. Outside of the Holy Land, the heavenly light goddess's power is not restricted. Even if she is in her normal state, it is very likely that she possesses the power of the other paramount heavenly gods." And Lin was well aware of how terrifying the heavenly light goddess was. Even before her transformation was complete, she was already able to force the heavenly sea god to unleash his Tao, true manifestation. Furthermore, she even had a chance to escape from the pursuit of the heavenly sea god. If it weren't for the fact that the heavenly heaven god had also unleashed his Tao, true manifestation, she would have most likely succeeded. Now that her transformation was complete, it was very likely that her normal combat prowess had already reached the Tao, true manifestation of the other paramount heavenly gods. Her combat prowess was so terrifying that it was enough to crush ordinary gods of creation. "Don't worry, I know." The little fairy flapped her wings and charged toward the heavenly light goddess at an even faster speed. A bright and dark ring suddenly appeared in her palm. The ring hovered in the palm of the little fairy's hand, and she instantly flung it in front of the heavenly light goddess. Heaven and earth fell silent, and everything turned black and white. Only the ring, where light and darkness intersected, was still rippling with vibrant colors. Divine technique, yin-yang infinite wheel. Tina raised her hand and summoned all of the yin and yang in this world. The heavenly light goddess continued to unleash boundless light in this world of black and white. She raised her hand and thrust it forward, as if she were dealing with the black stone. However, right at this moment, the power of light in her palm was absorbed by the bright side of the ring. Then, the power of the dark side transformed into a peculiar slash that sliced apart the light in the heavenly light goddess's palm. Rip! Blood splattered through the air. Right before the heavenly light goddess' astonished eyes, a bloody gash was torn into her palm. And Lin was also astonished. Tina was able to wound the heavenly light goddess when she wasn't suppressing her cultivation base. Just how strong was this lass? The infinite yin-yang wheel continued to tear through the heavenly light goddess arm, trying to slice through it. The heavenly light goddess took a deep look at Tina. Her eyes focused, and the light in her hand suddenly became several times more powerful, thereby suppressing the yin-yang infinite wheel. Aurora pulse. A peculiar 9-colored light ripple suddenly transformed into a pillar of light that pierced through the sky, tearing apart the black and white world in an extremely violent manner. Then, the yin-yang infinite wheel was also disintegrated into countless particles of light before crashing into Tina's body. Little Nod and Lin was given a fright. However, Tina was forced back over 50 kilometers by the Aurora pulse, but she still managed to stabilize her body. However, blood trickled down the corners of her mouth. Right at this moment, a boundless light suddenly appeared before her eyes, obscuring everything else. In that instant, Tina's consciousness was momentarily dazed by the blinding light. In a battle of this caliber, even a momentary lapse in concentration could result in defeat. The heavenly light goddess's fingertip was already stabbing toward Tina's head. Vanquish the heavens and slay all evil. Annihilation. Bam! The heavenly light goddess's fingertip was annihilated into nothingness. She turned around and waved her hand, which collided with the oncoming evil-slaying sword. Chapter 2242. Evil Sword Technique, Eternal Night. And Lin's first move was the most powerful technique he could unleash. Darkness instantly engulfed heaven and earth, reducing everything into nothingness. Furthermore, it was trying to drag the heavenly light goddess into Lin's domain of darkness. Heavenly light god technique, eternal day. A rare smile appeared on the heavenly light goddess face at this moment. Immediately afterward, her heavenly god technique, which was the complete opposite of Lin's technique, began to proliferate. Boundless light illuminated heaven and earth, as if it were the eternal light that could purify all things. It was holy, pure, and eternal. Boom! Light and darkness collided just like that. Regardless of whether it was the starry sky or the earth, everything disappeared in this collision. All living beings could only see the eternal night and eternal day in the sky. These were two completely different powers, but the only thing that remained the same was how terrifying they were. Even the 5 gods of creation were knocked back by the shockwaves from this sudden collision. My God, what kind of power is this? So powerful. All of the gods of creation felt their hearts skip a beat as they looked at the collision between light and darkness. This was a top-notch power that was beyond their imagination. It felt like a legendary battle before the creation of the world, and whoever won would be able to rule over the entire heavenly Tao. All of the gods of creation had this thought, and the tens of millions of living beings trembling in fear within the Holy Land were even more so. They had never seen anything like this before. It was as if the world was going to be destroyed in the next second, and even the light barrier of the Holy Land couldn't give them any sense of security. 1 second ago, Bai King was laughing and mocking the gods of creation for being trash in the hands of the heavenly light goddess. However, in the next second, he was engulfed by the shock waves from the collision between light and darkness. When his head materialized again, for the first time ever, the restriction finally gave him a complete body. He immediately fled from the center of the battle in a sorry state. The collision between the eternal night and eternal day gradually drew to a close, and Lin's darkness was unable to break through the heavenly light goddess's light defense. He looked up at the light before him. The light was no longer as bright, but the heavenly light goddess was surrounded by billions of layers of photon defense, forming a despairing iron wall. The woman inside the ball of light revealed a smile. She reached out a hand towards the sky, drawing down an object that could not be perceived by the naked eye or divine soul. It was supreme, and it encompassed everything. And Lin, do you think that if you snatch away a portion of the heavenly tomes, I won't be able to realize my plan? Naive, truly too naive. There are heavenly axioms in the tomes of heaven. 10 tomes of heaven are broken heavenly axioms, and 1 tomes of heaven is also broken heavenly axiom. The sort of broken heavenly axiom in my plan can still be completed. The heavenly light goddess extended a hand toward the void, and a golden pillar of light suddenly pierced through heaven and earth from her palm. This pillar of light was intermingled with golden lightning that resembled swimming dragons. The world began to tremble. Golden light began to fill the world, and Lin immediately slashed his sword toward the heavenly light goddess. However, his sword was blocked by the heavenly light goddess's absolute photon barrier. Awaken, the broken heavenly Tao sword. The heavenly light goddess roared. Not only did heaven and earth tremble, but even the eternal holy land of Taichu began to tremble violently. Ha ha! It's here! It's finally here! We can finally be free from this disgusting world. Bai King excitedly opened his arms and bathed in the light. At this time, a fist suddenly came toward him and smashed into Bai King's face. Boom! Bai King's face was swollen again, and he could no longer smile. Free? If you want to die, don't drag the other creatures of the holy land of Taichu down with you. Flowing Gold stared at the sanctimonious holy angel with extreme anger. Is this a death wish? No, this is not it. Bai King kept shaking his head. His eyes suddenly became dim. His skin started to dry and wrinkle. His eyes were still looking at the gold light that pierced the sky and the ground. He looked like he was looking forward to it. We have been in this state that is neither human nor ghost for too long. Can you imagine the feeling of loneliness when we are walking on a bustling street and suddenly the world becomes empty? Can you imagine that we have been trapped in this unchanging cage for tens of thousands of years, trapped in a small and unchanging world, facing the same powerlessness and boredom? Bai King looked at the body that appeared and disappeared from time to time and laughed. This state of existence, this body, can it really be called life? We have died a long time ago. We are a group of lonely ghosts with nowhere to go. No, even ghosts have a sense of existence more than we do. We can only degenerate, and linger on with our last breaths. We will become no longer alive, and we will no longer be ourselves. Instead of falling like this, it is better to pursue the true light. Bai King looked at the light that was getting bigger and stronger, with an obsessive look on his face. Not only him, but even some creatures of the holy land of Taichu had an inexplicable yearning and dependence on the light. They had long been desperate for this world. Seeing such a light full of hope, they always wanted to get closer, even if they turned into light. It didn't matter. One by one, the creatures even knelt on the ground, put their hands together, and prayed to the light. And Lin also saw this scene. Why did he feel like he had become the villain? However, he still used all the power of darkness on his sword and slashed at the heavenly light goddess. The darkness crazily swallowed the light barrier. The heavenly light goddess seemed to be prepared. She had accumulated a lot of power to build this impenetrable barrier. Even Lin couldn't break it in a short time. It was also at this moment that a huge hole suddenly appeared in the barrier of the holy land of Taichu, which had never shown any abnormalities before. Immediately afterward, a strange wave instantly swept over all the creatures in the first district. The 6 million creatures in the first district all trembled violently at this moment. The heavenly book pavilion was collapsing. Countless cracks appeared on the holy feather pavilion, and all the exquisite houses began to turn into dust. Both the creatures and the materials began to dissipate. The heavenly light goddess clenched one hand, and a sword-shaped object began to appear in her hand. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust, your final destination. It's light. She flipped the sword over. All the creatures on the ground began to turn into particles of light and were swallowed by the strange sword. Some of the creatures welcomed the light with longing expressions, while most of the creatures resisted, ran, and roared unwillingly at Bai Huang and the heavenly light goddess. Some of the stars of the holy feather pavilion rose into the sky, trying to attack the heavenly light goddess. Some of them had tears streaming down their faces as they looked at the destroyed city and the disappearing creatures with longing. However, nothing could be changed. The Light Society assimilated everything. Under the horrified gazes of the creatures in the first district of the Holy Land of Taichu, all the creatures in the first district turned into light particles and were devoured by the broken sword of the heavenly law. Even the city that had existed for tens of thousands of years was completely turned into dust. And Lin could no longer contain his anger upon seeing this. Look, is this your so-called future? There's nothing left once you turn into light. You're just nourishment for the broken sword of the heavenly Tao. Light is not hope. Life is. And Lin's thunderous voice spread throughout the entire holy land of Taichu. Some of the creatures seemed to have woken up from a dream, while others were unwilling to wake up. They continued to chase after the beam of light in the sky, relying everything on that beam of light. They were like gamblers who wanted to gamble their lives on a future that didn't even exist. Chapter 2243. All of the living beings in the first region had been sacrificed to the sword. All of the living beings in the first region knew what was going on. The scene of destruction, and in Lin's words, transformed into an indescribable force that motivated them. No, we can't die like this. That's right. There's no point in dying like this. Our civilization and our knowledge still need to be passed down. All of the powerful beings were enraged. All of them possessed extremely powerful cultivation bases to begin with, and most of them were at the Tao integration stage. They transformed into streaks of light and shot into the sky. They rushed out of the holy land through the hole in the light barrier that the heavenly light goddess had blasted open. They then unleashed a series of earth-shattering spell techniques toward the heavenly light goddess. Boom, boom, boom. Explosions rang out incessantly. Die. We don't need you to decide our future. All of the powerful beings attacked the heavenly light goddess's protective barrier, and Lin was extremely moved upon seeing this. 1 or 2 Tao integration stage super mighty figures attacking the heavenly light goddess's protective barrier was completely ineffective. However, what if several dozen Tao integration stage super mighty figures attacked the heavenly light goddess's protective barrier at the same time? Their attacks, combined with Lin's attacks, could double the rate at which the protective barrier was being depleted. At this moment, the 5 gods of creation also joined in on the attack. Their powers became even more terrifying, and the rate at which they broke through the barrier increased drastically. The heavenly light goddess was still activating the heavenly Tao sword and had no time to replenish her defenses. The protective barrier that contained billions of layers of light particles was rapidly thinning. Why do you have to do this? Why do you have to do this? Bai King, who had become very old, felt the light guiding him. He looked at the angry creatures that were fighting to survive. He kept shaking his head. He did not understand. He didn't know why, but when he saw countless powerful beings attacking the heavenly light goddess in a frenzy in order to survive, he felt an inexplicable sense of emotion in his heart. This chapter's teaser right at this moment. A burst of power quickly stripped away from his body. This was the power of the Heavenly Sutra Pavilion's restriction. The power of the Heavenly Sutra Pavilion's restriction began to shift and attach itself to the Heavenly Tao sword, completely severing its connection with his body. This my life? It's dissipating? Bai King felt his undying powers disappear. His body turned into light and disappeared from the world. This was his ultimate goal, to completely transform into light. Now it had finally come true. However, he could only watch as his existence was being erased bit by bit. Although there was no pain, why couldn't he feel happy at all? He turned his murky eyes toward the living beings that were charging into the sky to battle the heavenly light goddess. He wanted to ridicule their stupidity and ignorance, but he was completely speechless. Death had enveloped his entire body. He was really going to disappear from this world. An unprecedented emotion began to spread in his heart. His lack of resistance was in stark contrast to the experts who were fighting with their lives on the line. What is the true meaning of living? Light was never the representative of hope. Life is. And Lin's words suddenly rang in his mind. Yes, miracles could only be created as long as there was life. Only by staying alive could they break out of that hopeless situation. And why'd he give up his life? What wisdom and understanding of worldly affairs? He was just a coward. The rims of Bai King's eyes suddenly turned red. He wanted to roar and fight with those powerful beings, but he discovered that his body was slowly transforming into light particles. Bai King's voice was hoarse. He wanted to speak, but he could only transform into light particles and disappear in the end. A powerful being of the Holy Lands had fallen just like that. All of the other Holy Lands besieged the heavenly light goddess. It could be said that the heavenly light goddess had resisted the attacks of close to 100 Tao integration stage beings, several gods of creation stage beings, and a paramount heavenly god all by herself. The entire world was her enemy. The heavenly light goddess's broken sword of the heavenly Tao had already transformed from a pillar of golden lightning that pierced through heaven and earth into a sword hilt and a sword blade. The sword had two blades. One was light, while the other was dark. The blade of the sword rippled with an ocean-like blue light. The hilt of the sword was the boundless earth, while the tip of the sword was the boundless sky. The blade of the sword was the all-encompassing life form. 6 paramount heavenly gods combined into one sword. Shatter. And Lin aimed at the weakest part of the heavenly light goddess's barrier of photons, and he unleashed his most powerful heaven-crushing true intent. A dark sword projection pierced through heaven and earth, flattening mountains and blotting out the starry sky. Countless matter was engulfed, and even the laws of heaven and earth were severed by this sword projection. The turtle shell of photons was finally sliced in half. The dark sword projection continued onward, trying to slice the heavenly light goddess in half as well. The heavenly light goddess was astonished. She didn't think that her opponent would be able to break through her photon barrier. She instinctively waved the broken sword of the heavenly Tao in her hand to defend herself. Bam! There was a dull sound, and Lin discovered that her darkness was repelled by the massive sword before him. The darkness wasn't fighting against the light. It was as if he was fighting against the entire world, and it was the most powerful world at that. Whoosh! An extremely sharp light flashed past. The heavenly light goddess wielded the broken sword of the heavenly Tao and slashed it toward Lin. And Lin's extremely profound darkness was sliced apart by a sharp blade before landing on his body. An excruciating pain spread throughout his entire body. Giant and Lin, Tina exclaimed. And Lin was greeted by a dazzling sight. Not only was there light and darkness, but there were also all kinds of colors and powers of the heavenly Tao. This was the broken sword of the heavenly Tao. Why wasn't it broken at all? The sword projection bore down on Lin as it crashed toward the ground. The boundlessly powerful sword projection even sliced the entire outer realm of the starry ruins in half. All living beings were stunned by the heavenly light goddess attack. Was she going to destroy heaven and earth with a single sword strike? The broken sword of the heavenly Tao has been forged. The heavenly light goddess held the sword with both hands and pointed it toward the sky. She looked at the remaining heavenly book pavilions in the holy land of Taichu with a slight smile on her face. Now, there's only one more step to increase the power of the sword of the heavenly Tao by 9 times. Infinite light. The heavenly sword is here, and the heavenly Tao shall return. The heavenly light goddess suddenly raised the broken sword of the heavenly Tao. Immediately afterward, streaks of white light erupted from the heavenly book pavilions in the Holy Land, resonating with the broken sword of the heavenly Tao. All the district chiefs' expressions changed. Oh no, she's going to absorb the heavenly books in our heavenly book pavilions. We have to stop her. Otherwise, we'll end up like the people in the first district. Let's attack together. They knew what the heavenly light goddess was thinking, so they attacked her even more desperately. The entire holy land of Taichu was about to face its final moment of life and death. Chapter 2244. Within a bottomless abyss on the ground, a man coughed violently and threw up blood. Lin had almost been crippled by the sword of the heavenly Tao. He hurriedly swallowed a divine pill to quickly heal his injuries. At this moment, the heavenly light goddess was about to unleash her ultimate technique again. This time, she wanted to completely wipe out the entire holy land of Taichu from the ancient Taichu realm. The nine-colored light surged through the air, forming an indestructible light field that blocked all the attacks from the surrounding powerful beings. No matter how powerful the attacks were, the heavenly light goddess' invincible power struck despair into the hearts of all the gods of creation under Tina's command. However, Lin knew that the heavenly light goddess was not as invincible as she appeared to be. She was severely injured by the restriction several times, and she released a large amount of power to defend against everyone's attacks, as well as to activate the broken heavenly Tao sword. She's only putting on a brave front right now, and she's an enemy who looks strong but is actually weak, and Lin crawled out of the abyss and gripped the sword in his hand tightly. He was going to destroy that woman's final line of defense. At this moment, the boundless starry sky outside the ruins of Star had already become pure white. Pillars of light shot into the sky from all 9 heavenly book pavilions of the Holy Land of Taichu. The heavenly books that had yet to be absorbed also appeared before the heavenly book pavilions, releasing the most essential power of Tao fluctuations. Not only that, but even the heavenly books obtained by the 4 gods of creation began to tremble violently, as if they wanted to surrender to the heavenly light goddess. It was as if the sword of the heavenly Tao in the heavenly light goddess' hand was their final destination. No wonder the heavenly light goddess had chosen to obtain one of the heavenly books in such a leisurely manner. It turned out that she had been planning for this moment. The spell techniques outside were capable of destroying heaven and earth, and even the entire void was blasted apart. However, they were unable to break through the heavenly light goddess's 9-colored light field. Regardless of what type of energy the heavenly light goddess was, the paramount power of creation was disintegrated into various types of light energy. An omnidirectional defense. An absolute defense that no one could find any flaws in. The Red Emperor, the Spirit Emperor, and the other powerful beings continued to attack, but a deep sense of powerlessness welled up in their hearts, as if they were waiting for death to befall them. On the other side of the world, the ancient god realm was a place where only beings below the soul formation realm were allowed to enter. The 2 suns were still circling the heavens and the earth, rising and setting. However, all of a sudden, the 2 suns trembled violently, suddenly brightening and dimming like a pair of unprecedentedly large eyes. At the same time, their vision traversed an extremely long distance, penetrating a certain law membrane and directly seeing a sword blade that connected heaven and earth. Hey, what's going on? You want to use the heavenly axiom as a weapon? This is too much. If you want to do this, have you asked for my permission? The speed at which the 2 suns slid down from the sky suddenly became extremely fast, moving toward a certain direction. But all of a sudden, it seemed to have thought of something, and its movements paused. The 2 suns hovered in the air. Something's wrong. I still haven't comprehended the destruction origin of a top-tier world. If that woman can perform a heavenly sword-slashing world for me, why not? Perhaps it can even become an opportunity for me to comprehend this destruction origin. Besides, she's so powerful, and she's wielding the heavenly sword. Even if it's only a semi-finished heavenly sword, it's still much more powerful than a veteran god of creation. I really can't beat her. After a ferocious analysis, the two suns silently returned to their original orbits and continued to fly around the world as if they had nothing to do with the world. In the eyes of the beings on the ground, it was as if the two suns had suddenly gone in other directions, then suddenly returned. This was an unprecedented spectacle. Many beings thought that their eyes were playing tricks on them, which was why they were witnessing such an illogical scene. But those gods of creation are also very unfamiliar. I've clearly never seen them before, but I feel like they're from the same hometown as me. What a familiar feeling. After muttering to itself for a while, the sun returned to its normal appearance. However, what the beings on the ground didn't know was that the sun was currently watching the battle in the distance with a hint of excitement in its eyes. Heavenly Book, rise! Following a command, the dome of the Heavenly Book Pavilion exploded at the same time. 3 heavenly books began to appear and fly toward the goddess of light. Everyone's expression shifted. They knew that there was no time left, so they all attacked the heavenly light goddess with all their might. Some of them even charged toward the oncoming heavenly books. However, all of their efforts were in vain. All of the attacks on the heavenly light goddess were nullified. The powerful beings who attacked the heavenly books were in an even more miserable state. They were struck by the power of the restriction, and some of them were even reduced to ashes by the backlash. They were clearly trying to protect the Holy Land, and the heavenly light goddess was clearly trying to destroy the Holy Land of Tai Chu. However, the restriction was attacking them instead. All of the powerful beings of the Holy Land were extremely enraged by this. Don't waste your energy. Your fates have already been decided. You should all die along with the ancient Tai Chu realm. Let me free you from this. The heavenly light goddess looked at the powerful beings who were desperately resisting with a cold expression. Her voice was imbued with the might of the heavens as she issued her final judgment. However, right at this moment, a streak of green light crashed viciously into the heavenly light goddess's 9-colored light field. Countless transparent mirrors blossomed like lotus flowers around the figure. Heavenly Tao Mirror Lotus. Tina's figure appeared from within the lotus flower. She made a series of hand seals, and a mirror-like lotus flower blossomed and expanded beneath her feet. The heavenly light goddess's 9-colored light field projected light onto the heavenly Tao Mirror Lotus, and all of the light was refracted by the mirror lotus before being engulfed. Through this method, Tina managed to chew a massive hole through the light field in the blink of an eye. It's you again. The heavenly light goddess hated the fairy to the core. Tina didn't say anything. Instead, she tossed the heavenly Tao Mirror Lotus toward the heavenly light goddess. The heavenly light goddess was still absorbing the heavenly book, so she didn't have any time to spare. She yelled in a panicked voice, "Restriction! Help me!" All of a sudden, a burst of power from the heavenly Tao crashed down and flattened the heavenly Tao Mirror Lotus. Tina suffered a severe backlash, and she threw up a mouthful of blood. The heavenly light goddess heaved a sigh of relief upon seeing this, and a smile appeared on her face. Even the heavenly book pavilion's restriction is on my side now. What right do you have to fight me? Tina didn't say anything. Instead, she looked at the empty space around her and roared in rage. Restriction, look carefully at what you're protecting. Look carefully at who the true master of this world is. Tina's god of creation stage aura erupted forth. The divine mirror heavenly Tao once again appeared without reservation. At this moment, it was as if something had fused into the heavens and earth. The light that filled the heavens was torn apart by a gargantuan mirror. This mirror was embedded in the boundless starry sky, and it was able to reflect everything between heaven and earth. The heavenly light goddess was instantly excited upon seeing Tina's divine mirror heavenly Tao. She knew that this was the best opportunity to kill Tina. She immediately yelled, "Restriction! Help me kill her!" Rip! The sound of something being torn apart suddenly traveled over. The heavenly light goddess smile was still frozen on her face, but her eyes were already filled with astonishment. She looked down at her lower body to find that it had already been sliced in half by a burst of power. This was the power of a restriction.